Of the Enfield Planning Board to order. We will start with a roll call of those members present. I am Nate Miller, I'm the Vice Chair. However, as you can see, for those of you in the room, Chairman Fracht is remote today. So I will be administering the meeting in his place. And I guess we'll start by going around the room with Linda.
Linda Jones.
Eric Russell.
Again, Nate Miller.
Tim Jennings.
Paul Bianco.
Bill Griffin.
Jason Carter, alternate.
Craig Cartwright, alternate.
Ben Jorgensen, alternate.
And online we have
David Fracht.
All right. So our main item of business, which we will go into right now, is to reopen the hearing for the Laramie Farm development. Before I do that, there is an item of housekeeping that we want to make sure we take care of before we go into that hearing. Linda, you are recused from this hearing. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Okay. So I will be elevating Ben to sit as a full member in Linda's place for this hearing. So
should I move or stay
you
here?
should probably, relocate for the duration of the hearing.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
note about the people on their videos.
Just a reminder to turn videos off. Okay, yep. For those of you online, if you could turn your video feeds off, that will help, I guess, somewhat to ensure that we have a consistent audio feed through the course of the meeting. Okay.
I think Linda's seats are not suited my back.
So I guess without further ado, we will go ahead and reopen the public hearing that was continued from last month. I believe it was continued from May 27th. This is hearing P260402, DC Development and Construction LLC, Stephen Doherty duly authorized, and Maple Street Enfield Acquisition LLC, John DiBattista duly authorized. We're seeking final major site plan review approval to construct 86 townhouses and 213 apartments. This development is to be called Laramie Farm. The subject parcels are located at 107 Maple Street, map 14, lots 47 and 48, totaling 77.1 acres, and are owned by Maple Street Enfield Acquisition LLC, John DiBattista duly authorized. So I will recall this meeting reopen this hearing. Before we get started in the business of the hearing, I have a few kind of housekeeping items I'd like to note as well. I will stick as much to the items on the agenda as possible. And so we will be starting tonight with the review of the Verdantis report dated May 22nd, 2026. We want to review that with the developer and the applicant, I should say, in as much detail as possible and hear their response to that. I will take questions as we go on topical items that we cover, and then we'll save general questions to the end of each agenda item that's listed here under hearings. When you are speaking, please state your name, and please address me as the chair. Please do not ask questions directly of the applicant. Please direct all the questions to me as the chair, and we will go from there. I will call on any abutters to speak first, call on the general public next, and then finally those wishing to speak a second time would come after that. So with that said, I would welcome Carl, if you could just briefly. We do have a new plan set here. Could you give us potentially a high-level overview of what you have done since the last time you were in front of the board? We do have a new plan set. If you could hit the highlights of that plan set and any highlights of work that's been done since, I guess it would be April and now, and then just hitting the highlights, and then we will go into the Verdantis report and responses there too.
Okay, good evening. My name is Carl Dubay with the Dubay Group. We have our development team here, obviously, of course. So we received the review comments and the Verdantis review comments. We digested them very thoroughly and then assigned throughout our team the action items of that review. And that review had different components to it. So there was a section of review that had to do more with policy and board items and all of that. We can get into that, and we're well on our way with that, actually. We don't have any big issues with any of that. So, as a matter of fact, we don't have any big issues with the entire review. We thought it was an excellent review. And they also touched upon different sections, including the planning board list of questions. I think some of that was actually borne by the chair, and that section was good. They also reviewed. They had a general highlight executive summary section that were bulleted on the site plans, which we don't have any issues with at all. And I think we took care of all of them. Probably at least 90-95%. There's about 5% left over that we are basically going to coordinate with them little details that they would prefer, so that make sure we get what they want. There were other items on the review package that went into each sheet, every plan section, very detailed items. All of those, we don't have any issues with them, and we actually took care of those on the plans. Okay. So. There were also another section of the Verdantis review that talked about, I think, some abutter input, which we also addressed on the plans. There's still a few items left over on that we would just like to coordinate with the reviewer. And I think perhaps that abutter is here, and I think John, he's sitting right next to you. So actually maybe you guys can talk after the meeting and engage on that. So that's really, the takeaway is that our state permitting is moving along nicely. The DOT is moving along nicely now. The Verdantis review comments, each one of them, we studied and made changes to the plans that address those. So we don't need to go down every line item. If you want to, we could, but we did address them on the plans. And there might be a handful of items that we still need to wrap up. But we're well on our way. This is normal for a large project. Again, we don't have any issues per se with anything. I think there was another section of the review, and then I'm done. Yeah. There was another section of the review that talked about the Planning Commission, had some suggestions, and more logistical questions and other suggestions on overall things, which we also took to heart and also took care of. There were a couple items that we probably need a little bit more discussion on, but for the most part, that review load, we took it on our office, and then we got all the stuff done. It was like last week, so you're probably still looking at the plans. But we're here to say that the process is moving along very professionally, very nicely, and we are integrating those review comments. Okay. And we've done virtually all of it. In terms of the technical stuff, there's still some policy items that we are working through as well, which is, and we don't see any issues.
Okay. So, thank you, Carl. So following kind of the order of items here that is listed on the agenda, the first is the Verdantis report, and then the developer response to issues raised at the 4/24/26 hearing. I think many of those issues raised at the 4/24/26 hearing are actually alluded to in the first few pages of the Verdantis report. So we may actually cover that second item by going through the Verdantis report. After that, we will review the comments from the Regional Planning Commission. There are no other comments from any abutting municipalities that came in through the development of regional impact process, so just the Regional Planning Commission. Just here. And then we will go into matters related to the water supply capacity report. So given that that is on the agenda specifically, I think as we go through the Verdantis report, maybe we table those items related specifically to water supply and capacity and revisit those at that point in the agenda. Does that sound reasonable, members of the board? Okay. Is there somebody from Verdantis either in person or remotely this evening? No. Okay. When Rob comes in, I'm going to ask him to pull up on the screen the Verdantis report for those participating remotely. Do all of the members of the board have the Verdantis memo dated May 22nd, 2026? Okay.
Not physically printed in front of me now.
Okay.
Sense.
There was sent emails.
Go, Jim. Eric had a copy.
That's really pretty too.
You see the date was
5/22/2026. When Rob comes in, we will ask him to pull it up on the screen for everybody in attendance and those remotely.
Here it is.
It's gonna feel right. There we go.
I don't know where he went. That's a good question. Okay. Should we go in and then, or should we wait for him to return and pull it up? Actually, scroll down, Jason. I think you might have been right on top of it,
That's
right?
Upper Valley.
Right there.
This one?
That probably is it. 5/22 is, yeah,
There
okay.
you go. I'll just sit here for a while.
All right. So the first page is really introductory information about Verdantis's review. I think really the substance of the review starts on the second page of their memo. Okay. So these items in italics are planning board items that came up at the 4/24/26 meeting, as I understand it. The first is related to a water tank. Please review the town's water storage tank property. As it will relate to the Laramie Farm Development, Planning Board members are concerned with the development's driveway crossing close to the tank. Will there be any stability issues due to construction and/or test boring? Any other issues we are not contemplating? And then a related question to the future water tank site. Is it worth reserving a location further uphill on the property for the installation of a future town water tank? The developer has offered this, but we would need to reserve land out of any conservation easements placed on the undeveloped land. Rob, do we know, is Tavis coming either remotely or he's not? Okay, so we will have to take Verdantis's words as they are written on this page.
Yes, and we'll also kind of I'll keep a going list here for task order 2,
Okay.
which would be results from tonight that we want them to follow up on.
So
Sorry.
the response here, these questions were about the water tank and reserving a location for the water tank. Really, if we scroll down, Rob, Verdantis's response in bold says that, and we will talk about water supply and capacity later in the agenda, but if we go to that sentence starting, structural stability and protection of the water tank constitute town asset management functions under RSA 4111 and RSA 3814-16. The planning board may request confirmation that construction activities will not adversely impact the tank. However, binding requirements related specifically to the tank must be addressed directly by the town outside the site plan approval process. So I guess, Carl, first to you, is there anything that, as you were reviewing that particular comment and response, that you would like to offer from your perspective?
As part of our design updates, we substantially increased the stability area around the tank as part of our site plan. So that comment here has other comments embedded throughout their review that actually added in their totality to protect your asset even more. For instance, we took away the grading around the tank. We took away retaining walls. We took away any parking. We took everything away and further away so we could have more elbow room, more space around the tank for the town than you even enjoy now. We're actually providing even more. Very nice access, wide access, new fencing, gates, all of that tends to protect the asset. So all of that has been done on the plans. I can go on and on, but I'm not going to.
So the new set of plans that we
Yes.
have tonight reflects an increased stability area, is that?
Yes, our work has been pulled away from that area of the tank.
Okay.
And to not invoke any stress on the town's part. Now, there was one comment about the access road, and we are going through that with the title and easements that reflect the ability for us to put that road through there. But we also improved the design of that road and the infrastructure so that it's well away from the tank, and we've created better platforms for the town to enjoy long-term operation of the tank.
Okay.
So that was all part of this design item. That was one major item that we reconfigured substantially to directly address those comments.
Okay. Kurt?
Question on that. Would there be a boundary line adjustments or a easement so that future, say 25 years from now, somebody doesn't go in and just start doing something because it's really on your property versus the town property?
So when the tank got put in with the fee simple square rectangular
Yeah, yeah.
lot up there, and then the associated easements that tie that lot together up the hill to Route 4, it was always contemplated and even written that those easements, could be adjusted as necessary when the surrounding lot eventually got developed. And so in our plans, it did indeed include improvements and changes to those easements to give the town more flexibility for protection of its infrastructure. We're also replacing some water infrastructure that's already out there leading up to the tank to allow the access road. So that was all pre-contemplated decades ago for this purpose, including a Laramie Farm Road. So all of that is tying together nicely. I don't believe that we would need to do any lot line adjustments. It could all be done by easement. And as a matter of fact, we have now the design that allows us to give the town even more easement for protection around the tank. And likewise, in the southeast corner, where the old Laramie Farm design road was gone through, just like we are now, that could be consummated via easement and other protective measures that the attorneys can write up and work through with the town attorney, have that all reviewed.
Any other questions? Yes, Tim?
So it's taken a while for me to get my head around the demarcation between what the planning board has the responsibility and authority to regulate in terms of the municipal water and sewer systems versus what the town obviously has had all along. And I think the general conclusion in Verdantis is emphasizing that here is that anything to do with the design of the system, how it's laid out, who owns what, how it's going to be operated, the issue of is the easement adequate, is the access adequate, et cetera, is really a DPW and town manager and ultimately board of selectmen decision. Our site plan review regs are written in such a way that it doesn't make any distinction between a development that has a private water system and one that's served by municipal water service or sewer. And I think it's something we need to adjust in our site plan review regulations going forward. But in any event, most of what's in there lays out our responsibility is really applicable only if it's a private water system or their own water source and so forth. I think ultimately what we're going to end up needing is a memo letter from the Board of Selectmen, Water Commissioners, basically just outlining all of the agreements they've made with the developer. their decisions about ownership and capacity and all of that stuff will need to come from the Board of Selectmen. And at which point, we don't have a lot of discretion. You know, it was okay. That's, they're happy with it. So that's a condition that we can sign off on, in my opinion.
I would agree with you, it's part of the conditions and action items that are tied to conditions of, for the plan, absolutely. And we have to remind ourselves, the tank was put in with that little lot and the easements. It was always contemplated this would be developed because they would have taken the entire property. But they made specific legal and technical design in place so that when the development did come, if and when it is, that it could be blended and married together appropriately so the selectmen are happy, you know, DES would be happy, the state would be happy, and all be conditioned on that all being consummated, yes.
Yeah, for example, you show an extension of the security fencing around the tank.
Yes, sir.
What it's current configured. And that decision, again, is something that the DPW and Board of Selectmen have got to say, yeah, we're happy with that.
Right, right. We wanted to give you
Or not.
more. We looked at this thinking, well, if we were the DPW or the selectmen, what would you like to see and marry our site development and our provisions to improve your facility? And we did that and set it up. You know, I believe we set it up very nicely. And that's a good stepping stone to go to the next step, yes.
And consequently, the question about reserving land for a future water tank, again, is strictly a technical question for the Board of Selectmen to.
Can I ask you to clarify, is what you're saying that the planning board's approval of this application cannot be contingent on technical issues regarding water tank, easements, that sort of stuff? Is that what you're saying?
Well, actually, I think it's entirely contingent upon the technical review and acceptance and agreements that the Board of Selectmen make with the developer.
Okay, but that's not our purview. It's
Exactly.
Once the appropriate body has approved the water supply, the conditions around the water supply, then we accept that as sufficient.
We don't have any technical expertise or any position of authority to question that.
It
really.
would be similar to the driveway permit from the state.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would agree
The
with that.
state has to issue it, we do a conditional, you have to get a driveway permit from the state before you get signed off by us. But we have no say in what that includes. We just need that letter saying you have it.
Now, I just want to kind of refocus this briefly. The planning board made a comment expressing some, I don't know if concern is the right word, that there may not be enough clear zone around that tank related to construction activities. The response here is that they've increased that zone. And that ultimately, you know, that is a town asset management function, but they have been responsive here to an issue that was raised by the planning board. So,
Yeah.
while it is a town asset management function, this board raised that concern and they were responsive to it.
Maybe inappropriately raised.
What's that?
Perhaps inappropriately raised.
Well, it should have been, I think we can express some ideas and questions and suggestions and so forth to the Board of Selectmen.
Correct.
And they take it up and, yeah.
I would agree with that.
Any other questions on that specific item related to the clear zone of the tank? Let's move on to the next item. And I'm being thorough here, and I don't really want to bore people reading things verbatim. I am not Verdantis. I am not capable of interpreting Verdantis's item, but I think it's important that we do go in detail through this memo and make sure that on the record we are addressing each of the comments herein. So bear with me along those lines. The next comment, this is a planning board comment in italics, apparently from the April meeting. Pump station and other sewer and water assets. The planning board is interested in recommendations for the underground infrastructure being planned for this development. Should the town own the pump station that is proposed for sewer? How about water and sewer mains and shutoffs and curb stops? What is the best solution for the town? How does this work with regard to easements and deeds? Verdantis's response, and this may be kind of covering some of the ground that we just covered, But I want to read Verdantis's response here. Potential upland areas are depicted on the overall site plans. The planning board may acknowledge conceptual identification of a future water tank site. However, it does not have authority to require land reservation or exclusion from easements through site plan approval unless such are deemed necessary to provide adequate utility for the project. Any such reservation would require separate town action pursuant to RSA 3195B and RSA 4111. Proposed sewer, pump station, and water utilities without referencing any connections off-site are shown on the utility plans. The planning board may review layout, access, and easements for site plan compliance. However, ownership and acceptance of utilities are municipal decisions governed by RSA 3814 through 16. Utilities serving only the development typically remain private unless the town separately elects to accept them. The planning board should not condition approval on town acceptance. Please note, there is little, if any, mention of water source needs or reference to any town dialogue regarding the same in the application. We know that. That is coming up later in the agenda. Ultimate recommendation at this point is to request applicant to illustrate to the board how they intend to provide utilities for this project, including any town approvals as required. So Carl, I will invite you again to add your color commentary and any response you may have to that comment from Verdantis.
The Verdantis comment, generally we agree with, and because the comment is really following the laws and following the regulations and following the process, and we fully intend to keep following that process. So the utility design, all of that, done to a very high level of quality. I think that the developer has mentioned to staff multiple times that he's willing to work with staff and the town in coming up with alternative solutions. I'll give you one example. So the conservation easement, half this project's in conservation easement. The town suggested that as part of alternatives in helping the town out, if the town needed to get into that conservation area, we would have, if the town attorneys and our attorney worked out legal agreements, that there would be exceptions that the town could go into those easement areas, conservation easement areas, with the right approach and design and protection, if it benefited the people of the town. So there are options that left the door open for that. We don't need those. We don't need those assets. I think that would be borne through the final design of all the water engineers and the municipal engineers and the private engineers, and all of that worked out. But if there was an opportunity where part of those conservation areas might be needed for an access or for a well or a future tank or anything that we don't need that you might want, that the discussion is certainly open for potential exceptions in the easement documentation that you guys would be reviewing. So we feel, again, that's a win-win situation on that arrangement.
Any comments from members of the board on that?
And I think the way that might manifest itself is if the Board of Selectmen, via their engineering work, said, yeah, we really do want to have this tank site reserved, and it might then fall on the planning board to ensure that that easement was made available, done properly.
Right, and it might be a description done by the attorneys. So, because you might change your mind of where you need something. Oh, we put an easement over here, we really want it over there. Oh, but if there's a legal description that they can work out, that way you're not specifically pre-designing something that for an asset, you might need something a little different in say decades from now. We don't know, but we're open to that flexibility, and that flexibility can be written into the deeds of the conservation easement.
Any other comments from members of the board? All right, let's go on to the next comment, Rob, if you could scroll down. The next comment from the planning board was related to lighting. The planning board had questions about the lighting packs to be installed on the buildings themselves. These are different from the area lighting around the exterior of the project. Please take a look at these and make observations and recommendations. Verdantis's response, lighting is shown on the lighting plan and architectural elevations. The planning board can require compliance with the adopted lighting standards. Full cutoff fixtures, no uplighting, and light trespass limits as outlined under site plan review section 5.7. Determination of lighting requirements should only be tied to adopted standards. It does not appear current regulations limit architectural components such as light packs. The board may request additional lighting details for wall packs, etc., to assist in determining compliance with lighting regulations. We'll follow the same cadence. Carl, do you have any comments on that particular Verdantis comment?
No, but if someone has a particular specific fixture comment, we're always open to adjusting something. But, you know, our lighting design does meet the standards, but we're open to any, you know, any tweaks or anything like
So
that.
I'm going to ask that same question of the board here, because somebody raised this as a point, and does anybody want to comment on their thinking as it relates to this topic? Tim, go ahead.
Briefly. I think when you're ready.
Tim, and then I will call on David after Tim.
Okay. I think we specifically asked about the 3000 K, you know, light intensity or color, and you guys said, yeah, they're all 3000 or under. And I would like, to the extent we can, to have that apply also to the interior lights of the building, because you could have a row of apartments with $3,500 or 3,500 watt, not watt, K lighting, and create a bank or a wall of light that is, you know, blinding up there. So it would be nice if you guys were willing to do that, just to ensure every light bulb up there is 3,000 and up.
I believe that for the townhouses, you could write into the condo docs that the exterior lights, just like anything else, the exterior skins of the building are protected for high quality. And of course, you know, we would say, well, we're not going to want someone having a blue light here and a red flashing light here, and except for, you know, Christmas decorations. But I think overall the basic lanterns and the basic outdoor porch lights and garage lights, usually there'll be a common statement that basically says, you know, we'll supply the light bulbs, you buy the right light bulbs that are the right intensity and color, because we want that to be, you know, looking good and consistent. So usually that's written into the condo docs, and those condo docs are actually reviewed by your town attorney, and if you make note of it, they make sure that some of those discussions are in there. Regarding lighting from inside a unit, that's very difficult to control inside, you know, someone's bedroom, you know.
But you buy the first
outside
light bulbs though, so.
Right, but the outside and all that, I think that's typically controlled by the condo association to have a uniformity. We recognize people's rights, but, you know, still has to be some kind of general uniformity. And that's all. The answer is yes, that would normally be taken care of through what we call the condo docs, and that is a condition, one of your approval conditions, that the attorneys have to all review that and sign off on that. So that's all protecting this board with the conditions that, and that would be embedded in it.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to David next, and then Kurt. David.
Thanks, Nate. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I believe the comment originated because there was no indication of either the location or particular model of the wall packs. I don't remember if it was on the condos or on the apartment buildings. And I will confess that I have not looked at the revised site plan to see if that has been added. Comment to that, Tom?
So we did update the lighting plan to parallel our design updates overall for the site, but we did not get into the detail of specifying an exact fixture that might be mounted to the side of a townhouse or an apartment building. I believe the architectural work does show some general outside building lighting, and I believe that also the intent would be to just very dimly light, just enough for, you know, aesthetic purposes, downlights, and basic pedestrian scale areas of the sidewalks along a building. But, you know, our intent is not to light up these buildings so they glow we don't want to do that. And I think in your regs, you point that out, and we don't show that type of lighting on the buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Kurt, and then Jason.
Basically, you pretty much answered the question I was having. My concern is for any large developments, it's just the overall lighting scheme for the whole project. Be conscious of just downlighting, no glare, especially with yours because of the elevation. Everybody else is most likely going to be looking up, which changes how you view the lights. And I know there were some questions regarding our regs. My impression is our regs were written for a retail commercial development versus a residential development. And that's why there was some conflict maybe, type of thing. But if you can go with, I don't think our regs say you have to go to this level. That might have been more of a maximum level that was allowed. So if you can do.
You are absolutely correct. We chose to go less.
Yeah.
And so there's ratios in the tables and everything.
Yeah.
We're allowed to go less as long as it meets code, as long as it meets building code, safety codes.
Right, yeah.
And that they have like a lighting standards, professional standards thing for dark sky friendly or cutoff.
Yeah.
All these standards, and those are all embedded in the lighting designer's design, and they absolutely meet the intent and then some of your lighting design standards.
Jason.
So just, I think this has already been fully explored, but I just want to clarify. So the Verdantis says there does not appear to be regulations limiting components such as light packs, but it does say 419.1 in our zoning code. All building lighting for security and aesthetics shall be designed, located, et cetera, as to prevent projectional light trespass and glare across property lines, et cetera, et cetera. So they just missed that, right? That's the conversation here.
And fair enough, comment taken, and that's why I believe on the sections, on the elevations, we show indicators of that. But you can tell that we're not focused on those lights. There might be just a little bit of accent on a pedestrian scale, but not to light up the side of a building like a commercial building or anything like that. These people that are going to live here, they respect the environment. It's kind of a hard statement to say, but really this setting and the way this is set up, especially for the condominiums and then even on the apartments, there's going to be rules for all of that, but that's all managed by professional management company. And there's going to be, people aren't going to be allowed to just put up glare for any reason. And I know the town of Enfield does not want that. And it's in your intents of the regulations that you just pointed out. And so we take that with a grain of salt with Verdantis comments, but we are delivering that on the plans.
Any other questions on this item from members of the board? Okay, we will move on to accessible parking spaces. This was another planning board comment from April. Please review these planned spots all around the development. Do they need more in the underground garages, the townhouses, anywhere else? Verdantis's response. Accessible parking and routes are shown on the site and garage plans. The number of required accessible parking is a function of the overall parking stall number per ADA regulations. For reference, we have provided a section of those regulations here. And it goes on to say that based on the total number of parking spaces, there are either 7 or 8 required accessible spaces total and 2 required van accessible spaces. Carl, I will ask you, based on the set of plans that we now have in front of us as the most updated set of plans, do we meet these thresholds?
And more.
Yeah.
There are some very minor striping details in the garage and the A sheets, the architectural sheets that they would be working on during their final design, but the intent obviously will be equal opportunity for ADA and much more than what's minimum required for any location and any use in any consideration.
Members of the board, are there any questions on this item? I can't see David remotely.
Oh, sorry.
No, okay. Are we good to move on? Okay, to the next item, parking in general. Have a look at parking as outlined in the application. Thoughts and recommendations? Is the plan adequate for residents and visitors alike? Verdantis's response, parking supply and circulation are shown on the site and parking plans. The planning board may review parking configuration for safety and functionality. However, pursuant to RSA 674-16, Section 7, as amended by Senate Bill 284, effective September 13th of 2025, municipalities may not require more than one parking space per residential dwelling unit. The board should not require residential parking minimums exceeding this statutory limit. The applicant, however, currently offers providing 1.7 parking stalls per unit. We assumed here that this includes the ADA stalls illustrated, which the board may permit. Further guidance on this, the current quote-unquote typical parking ratio provided for new multifamily housing projects in New Hampshire is approximately 1.1 to 1.4 parking stalls per dwelling unit, with a strong trend towards 1.0 to 1.2 spaces per unit for larger apartment developments. Verdantis could not find a regulation limiting the maximum number of stalls, provided all other regulations are satisfied. It appears, based on statute, the total number of stalls proposed is acceptable. Recall, see prior bullet regarding ADA stalls. I think that Verdantis comment is pretty clear. Carl, do you have any commentary on that section?
No, so we have plenty of parking and it's well distributed. As a matter of fact, our ratios are even higher for the townhouse units, just based on, some preferences. However, though, Stephen mentioned to me earlier that he's willing to do, it's called banked parking. So we show banked parking on the plan. In other words, if there's a strip of parking that someone, we pre-plan, we pre-design, we permit that. We may not pave it, we might just grass certain areas that are identified on the plans as banked parking. So if we don't need to put the pavement in, we don't have to, but if we see that there is a need, then we can very, very easily implement that because it's already pre-approved and pre-permitted. So it's sort of, that's called like banked as an asset that if you wanted to do it, you could. So that is embedded in the design of the plan. So that again is good. We don't want to put any more pavement out there than we have to either. But that's good environmental and functional and operational planning.
So the updated plan set does show areas of banked parking?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and how many spaces total are banked in the?
Oh, I don't know. Tim could probably get that answer for you, and probably after you get on with another item. But there were areas where we thought that there was probably more than what we really needed, and they were easy to bank. They weren't part of critical infrastructure, so there would be a chunk of parking, like a strip along an apartment building that we really probably didn't even need, but we did it because at the time we started this project, you had other expectations for a real high number of ratio of parking, so we wanted to make sure that we delivered on that. So since the state law changed and regs changed and people's habits changed, we're reflective of that, so you can have, it's a win-win for the town and the project.
So where is that banked parking shown?
I think Tim can get you an answer. It's on one of the plans.
Shown on the site layout plan, which is sheet 21 through 23.
It might be like a screened area or something.
Yeah, they're in like a grayed out area, and they're labeled as, and they're also in the legends.
And I think you're actually adding them up.
I'm tallying them up now, yeah.
I think we would still be like even if you left the bank parking grass, we'd still be way over on the minimum ratio that's required.
I'm getting 87 spaces.
87?
Yeah.
So that brings us down to a ratio of somewhere
I
around
think we're around 1.5.
1.5.
1.5, taking out the bank parking? So that the areas, the parking spaces shown in gray here are the banked spaces? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. But nothing would be affected in terms of the pedestrian infrastructure that is next to that banked parking, that would still exist?
And the answer was Correct, Chair. I don't know who can hear Tim, but
Okay.
confirmed.
No, that wasn't anybody, okay, that's somebody coming into the meeting. Any other questions from the board on this item? Moving on, EV charging. Currently, there are no EV charging locations proposed on the plan. 2% of the vehicles on the road today are EV, and 7 to 9% of new cars sold are EV. Should we require at least some charging capacity here? Verdantis's response: the board is correct. No EV charging infrastructure is depicted on the plans. Enfield regulations do not authorize the planning board to require EV charging installations. Under RSA 674-16, such requirements must be expressly adopted by ordinance. The planning board may encourage future-ready accommodation, but should not require EV charging as a condition of approval. Carl.
We support EV charging, and our design, because we have big parking spaces, big sidewalks, and most of the areas that are actually near a main entrance for the apartment complexes. That's very easy to actually put in EV. Very easy. We have the power already with the building. We have that infrastructure already by default for other reasons, and we have the ability to run conduit along landscaped areas, and pre-run conduit. But EV charging stations at those walkways, the walkways are plenty wide enough. You've seen site plans that are so tight that you can't put anything out there, not even a bollard. But we have plenty of room for EV, and there's EV standards, you probably all know, those of you who have EV cars, so absolutely. There will be most likely EV in the apartment garages. That's a really big item. People want to pay extra to have that. You plug the car in and walk into the elevator and go up to your unit, and that's pretty awesome. So we would have that infrastructure embedded. The number of them, the exact location, really would be a site management issue, but we absolutely would cater to that demand. EV in the townhouses, again, the townhouse infrastructure power would be already in the townhouse itself for that. They usually run, that for the garages, and likewise, a buyer or a renter of a townhouse is probably, there's going to be a percentage that want EV, and we absolutely will provide that if they want it.
Mm-hmm. Tim.
Just a comment, I was involved in the City of Lebanon project where they do have requirements for EV, and it turned out for that project, the requirements were onerous. They really weren't reflecting the current state of the market. And I think the approach that the town's taking here is probably the correct one. We don't have a specific requirements, number of, types of, et cetera, in our regulations. And as I understand it, if the homeowners association 4 or 5 years from now decides we've got a lot of demand for this, we want to put this infrastructure in, it's fairly easy to do.
Very easy on this project to do, because we have the power and we have the room to do it, and we think that there's going to be a demand, and we'd definitely do that. So Francis is correct, there's no regulation that says you shall do it, but we're offering that we will probably do it. We definitely would have the ability to do it, and we would reflect that in our tenants and needs of that. Some towns and cities in New Hampshire now have actually not required it, but give you a credit for other things. If you do an EV charging station, you have a credit for something else. But we're not asking for anything like that.
Any other comments or questions from the board on the topic of EV charging? Does that make sense to everyone? We can't require it. We can encourage it to be future ready. It sounds like it is future ready. David Fract has a question online. Go ahead, David.
Carl, were you thinking level 1 or level 2 chargers? Or infrastructure for it?
Are you talking about like high capacity, high volume, quick?
That's level 3, I think, is the
That's level
super
3.
quick charge. Level 2 is like an 8-hour overnight type charge, I think. Level 1 is really plugging it into those regular outlets. Yeah.
I think that
Level
all
1
of
takes
those,
forever.
all of those levels would be available just because we have the infrastructure to it, and if there's a demand for it, we'd certainly do it. Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions on EV charging? At this point, I'd like to just briefly pause, ask any members of the public, is there anything we have covered so far in the Verdantis memo that any members of the public have questions or comments about before we continue? Seeing none, we'll continue on with snow storage. Snow storage. Have a look at the development snow storage plans. The planning board is concerned about areas where the snow would be stored or piled uphill from roads and sidewalks where meltwater could run downhill across these travelways and refreeze. We are hoping to avoid hazardous conditions. Verdantis's response: snow storage areas and grading are shown on the grading and drainage plans. What is less clear is the direction of snow melt flow. Snow management falls within planning board authority under site plan review section 511. The board may require revisions to prevent hazardous icing conditions as a condition of approval. Alternatively, the board may wish to require plan revision to detail how snow storage areas are designed to drain away from paved areas to prevent re-icing prior to approval. Additionally, where such drainage is directed towards wetlands, the board may also wish to consider requiring plan revisions to include treatment of stormwater to minimize impacts to sensitive lands. And Carl, I would ask for your color commentary and response to this item again.
So we did, Tim, you might want to
Cue it up for you?
cue it up. We did edit the snow storage areas, and I believe we might have even placed them on the grading and on the landscape plan. So on snow storage areas, one thing we do know is the whole site is being done to the Green Snow Pro standard. That's a voluntary requirement for DES, so we have that snow management package that basically takes care of a lot of issues related to snow storage and snow and what's in the snow and how you manage that. It's a state program. Required, if you're certified, as a plow driver or a maintenance person, you follow those guidelines. That really helps a lot. But we did move these things around. There might be a few more that the board may identify or Verdantis may identify in very specific areas. I didn't want to go through like 100 little snow piles. But there's also in the labeling requirement that, it just allows us to take the snow away too. Sometimes you do that and deposit it appropriately. But we did move these around. We were actually, in our original design, we were careful to put them where, there's no trees and damaging things. And, but the snow storage area is always an issue with any planning board. How much do you show? And it's all regulated by the AOT permit as well. So we try to eliminate any cross pavement drip. There's no way you can have a perfect plan where you're not going to have any drip from a snow pile or a ridge from plowing that's going to go somewhere else. There's only a limited amount of catch basins you can put in. So I think we have a reasonable balance on that. We don't have any big areas where there's just piles and it's just like cascading across a drive aisle, like, unmitigated. I believe we reworked this to be a really good balance, and if anyone has a particular spot that they would like to review, if you could just let Rob know through the city staff and through Verdantis, we're going to do a round of final items with them as well. And so if you have an item on one particular snow pile or anything like that, we would absolutely attend to it.
Okay. Rob, you mentioned a second task order with Verdantis, assuming that they will be looking at this updated plan set and, for lack of a better term, trust but verifying the items that we have seen here. Could we include specific review of the snow storage modifications that have been made here to ensure that Verdantis concurs that the potential for re-icing has been minimized based on what changes have been made so far? Does that sound reasonable to
Yes, sir.
Everyone? Members of the board, are there any particular locations of snow storage concern that you have as it relates to this re-icing concern that should be flagged specifically for Verdantis? Are there any other questions or comments on the topic of snow storage before we move on? Okay. Next, planning board comment, utilities and their placement / location under roads. In this situation where the roads will remain private, does it make sense to have the utilities buried under the road? It is our understanding that typically roads are public, therefore having the utilities underneath make more sense for public access. The planning board was curious if there was another option when these roads will be privately owned and maintained. Verdantis's response, utility locations related to private roads are shown on the utility and roadway section plans. Public standards do not appear to apply to private ways. Acceptance of roads or utilities rests solely with the town pursuant to RSA 674-21, Section 5. The planning board may recommend alternatives, but should not condition approval on public road standards or town acceptance. The board may request or ask the applicant to request direction from the town related to any easement language or location requirements for incorporation into revised plans where utilities may be considered for town ownership. Legal footnotes as referenced, applicable RSA 674-16, RSA 674-16-7, RSA 3814 through 16, RSA 4111, and RSA 674-21-5. I don't have a lot of context for where this particular comment came from, but do any members of the board who may have brought this comment forward have thoughts or questions related to this?
I think this is similar to the other water and sewer issues.
It's not really within our purview.
Carl, is there any particular thought or response that you had to this comment? I should have offered that to you first.
No,
I'm sorry.
I agree with the Verdantis response, and these utilities are all, designed very at a very high quality. All the valves are placed where you would want to maintain them, which is on pavement. You don't want to be looking for them under a landscape bed or mulch or anything like that. So this is a very typical project design for sewer and water and electrical, and very high quality, meeting all the state requirements, and invariably you're going to have utilities that are on their driveways and roads. These are all private roads, private driveways, maintained by private contractors that are hired professionally by the owners and association owners at a very high level. We do have cross-country sewer lines where it makes sense, and we're happy to work with the town, as this gentleman pointed out, with DPW and everything else, that these utilities would meet their expectations and then some.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from members of the board on this item? I can't see David, but his hand is not up. Should we continue? That, I believe, covers the planning board's comments that were provided to Verdantis following the 4/24/26 meeting. So that is actually, I believe we just covered the second bullet point in today's hearing agenda with that. So is anybody aware of any other comments from the board that were raised at the April 24th, 2026 meeting that were not addressed specifically in the section we just went through, before we get to Verdantis's own review comments, which we are about to dive into?
Well, so there were two lists. One David wrote, a page or so long, questions that he had. I think you guys said you were going to take that and number it and come back with, okay. And then there was a memo from Gwen Desert that had a bunch of items.
I believe we're gonna get to that later in the Verdantis
Okay.
memo. At this point, I'm just focused on planning board comments from 424. Later in this memo, they get into public comments, I believe, from 424, but planning board comments. Are there any other planning board comments from 424 that we didn't just cover?
Well, so David's memo, did you have that reduced to a numbered item and checklist and so forth?
I think Mr. Jennings is referring to a list that was produced through the chair at the initial board meeting for final application. And I have a copy of it here. We actually, on the fly, verbally addressed, I think maybe 90% of those comments.
You probably did.
We went through every single one of them at that hearing, and then some of them I flagged for action, and they were indeed put on the plans, and actually some of them were actually part of the Verdantis comments or other comments that we actually took care of as well. I think we took care of by default, and you know, when you do the next review by Verdantis, and you also looking at the plans, I believe that we took care of all of them. A lot of them were basic verification questions as well. But you know, we can go through them if you want again. But there's some highlights there, you know. But there were suggestions that were made on that, and I believe we took care of all of them. We actually took every single one of those. I don't think there was one that we said, nope, not going to do it. So if you want to go through them, we will. But they were all kind of like covered. Almost all of them were covered at the hearing itself, or even through other reviews.
I'm going to ask that question of David Fracht, who may have provided that initial memo and list. David, is there anything that, from the planning board's comments on 424, which I think were largely drawn from a memo that you wrote, is there anything that you had that we have not yet covered before we go into Verdantis's general comments? And then eventually the public comments.
I believe everything has been addressed either at the April hearing or through the comments that have been made. I'm going to have to go through item by item and just triple check myself on it. But I do believe that Carl has made a very good effort at addressing all of the comments that were on the list.
Okay. Eric.
I had one verbal comment that I had made that isn't addressed in the new plans. I don't know if this is the right spot or not. It may be addressed later, but just regarding 555 and our regulations around accommodating pedestrian traffic on roads and the sidewalk on Route 4. They're still not in these plans. And you may be addressing that in your comments coming, or just when you're asking for things that have not been addressed yet that were commented before, that's one that I made.
Yeah, let's.
As a matter of fact, you picked up on that, and then it was also made in a comment through the Planning Commission review. And the Planning Commission review asked for additional details on all the routing and walkways and signage, MUTCD signage, crosswalk details, warning signs for pedestrian crosswalks and pedestrian amenities. I know we added benches and things like that as well, but specific to the routing and walkways, one thing that we did not do, remember I said we're like at 95%, there was one item in there is a more robust signage plan for protection of pedestrians as they maneuver through the site. Everything has a walkway associated with it, and almost all of them are raised, curbs as well. I'll give you an exception to that, in that we have a dedicated walkway along the ribbon of driveways through the townhouse development that is striped out, and that is protected. So that's not in the people's driveways where backing a car out into it or parking into it. And it's not in the aisle, it's actually a wider section that people can walk along instead of hopping up and down curbs every time, you get to a string of driveways. It's an open area that's striped out that's particularly for pedestrians. We didn't point that out, but someone asked the question on the plan.
My comment is not related to on-site, it's related to Route 4 specifically.
Okay.
And the sidewalk that in the conceptual plans joined the town sidewalks on Route 4, and specifically around pedestrian traffic along fronting streets in the vicinity of the development. That's the regulation that I'm referring to, and not within the development, but specifically along Route 4, which is a critical component to integrating this new community into the existing community. So,
all right, so I would like to have the time to work on that, because that's associated with the driveway permit with DOT. And we just got to a milestone with DOT, which is very, very good. They agreed with how we would put together a left turn pocket. Now we just have to execute that. There are issues with the right-of-way in that area that we're finding out, but and drainage that our final plans actually contemplated. You can see that on the plans. I think there was a request to connect the walkway all the way down through. If we physically can do it, we'll do it, but we just have to work with the DOT to find the space for it. And I think we're learning that they ended the sidewalk where they did for good reason, because it was hard for them to continue it physically with the embankments and right-of-way that was allowed to them, and the water main is right there as well. So I think we can come up with some kind of solution, but that's one thing I just can't give you an answer on that, completely, but we will work on that.
Speaking just from my perspective, I think it's fundamentally important that this development be connected meaningfully and efficiently to the rest of the town's pedestrian network. We don't want an island here. We want connectivity to the rest. And I recognize that you're working through maybe some engineering challenges there, but just to be clear, it is your ultimate intent to have a connection to the pedestrian network of the town, so that this...
Specifically along Route 4.
Yeah.
If we can physically do it with permits and we have the design, the space to do it, that's one thing, but we're finding that we're constrained, like we legally couldn't do it. I'm not sure how we could actually do it. There might be other alternatives, but that's an issue that we need to work on. I can't give you an answer for that yet. And I'm just being honest with you. It'd be very, very difficult to actually perform on that sidewalk. I guess I would just leave it at that, unless Steve or John want to chime in on that. That's probably one last item that we're trying to get our hands around.
Okay.
Stay here with me, because I need some help. John Cronin for the record. As far as the connectivity of the sidewalks, as he says, if it's doable, it doesn't appear to be a great distance. As you know, the private developer can't intrude on neighbors' properties that are along that stretch. You'll see the frontage piece along Route 4 on this plan is relatively small, and then when you're spreading it out. In some cases, the connectivity piece, it's kind of a partnership with the community and the developer, that the off-site improvements are done either in a CIP, or if there isn't enough right-of-way, certainly the town has the right to take that frontage rights, whether it's 4 feet or 5 feet, to make it happen. So there's a few steps, and to respond to the chairman's question, if it's feasible, doable, and within a range of reason for cost, Hopewell wants to do it. They would like to have connectivity too.
Kurt.
I know you're focused on the Route 4 aspect of the sidewalk. Just my understanding is that the town has a sidewalk right-of-way on May Street that's currently unused, grown over, but it's legally there. And if you walk it, you'll actually find where it used to be paved.
And if that's a substitute for the desire for Route 4
It's not,
connectivity.
specifically, it's not, because connecting to the Enfield Village School, you more than double the distance to where
Yeah,
it's
but I'm just saying
impractical
that-
versus very practical.
We can look at
I'm just saying, like, I don't.
I'm just pointing
I would
out
not
the
view
legal
that as a
aspects of
substitute, 'cause,
what's
I mean, I live
possible.
on Maple Street, it's
Yeah.
very safe to walk that street as it is, but it's not a practical solution for what we're talking about, and connecting it in to the rest of the community.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So I don't know the best way of kind of addressing this other than to say that this is something that we want to keep on our list of items that we follow up on. I don't know that it is ready for prime time to be part of Verdantis's review, because I don't know that there's much for them to review at this point as it relates to that. Suffice it to say, I think, certainly from my perspective, and it sounds like yours as well, Eric, we do want to see meaningful pedestrian connectivity from this development to certainly the school and to the rest of the broader town sidewalk network. And I'm sure you, as the applicant, want to integrate this, as to the best of your ability to ensure pedestrian connectivity from the people that live here to the rest of the community. Does anybody in the board not feel that that's an important consideration here?
I feel it's very important.
Completely agree with you.
I just don't know how we're going to do it. I mean, we've talked about it on a number of occasions, the difficulties of connecting that sidewalk up. And I don't know if we really should start looking at Plan B,
Well,
if there is a possibility.
hang on.
Don't concede something because it's hard.
No.
You gotta learn what it
There's
is.
a
They
lot
got
of
a lot of work to do,
challenges
and they're
in
doing
this
the work.
project that have been But there's a certain point at which, the return isn't going to be worth it.
They're doing the work, they just haven't gotten there yet.
I guess we need to understand what the challenges are and how they've addressed them or unable to address them, so that we can meaningfully respond to that.
Right.
Fair enough.
And they're doing the work.
And I was involved in the Route 4 sidewalks that went up Route 4 from Jake's up to the high school, or the middle school, elementary school. And DOT and the town worked very closely together to acquire slope easements. We had to build some walls, retaining walls, and so forth. We worked hand in hand with them. So I do believe that with a joint effort between the town and DOT and the developer, that we can get this done.
David, go ahead. I thought you were pointing at Carl.
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate that pedestrian connectivity is very important. And I wonder if you have considered the possibility of using state right-of-way on the other side of Route 4. Is that a possibility that you have or could discuss with DOT?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, so the whole right-of-way width is in play for the design, obviously, and that includes both sides of the road. As we get the left turn pocket design and in place, and we will absolutely look at the trying to fit the sidewalk criteria into that as well. So we are looking at the entire width of that right-of-way barrel through there. It seems that in our research, the right-of-way widths vary through that area, where they worked hand in hand. You can see it on the plans. The DOT worked hand in hand with the town through the more urban locations of Route 4 through the town, and as it opened up into more of the highway, or just a cleaner ribbon of road, and through our site, the right-of-way plans kind of they're vague. As a matter of fact, there's some plans that show one width and another plan shows another width. So we're actually working right now to resolve that. And if we can have the width to do it, we'll do it. And as Mr. Jorgensen pointed out, as well as Mr. Jennings, if there's a way technically we can do that, we will implement it, and it's part of the design. So we're into that right now, where the DOT just actually approved and we can get copies for you for this from the VHB traffic engineers. They did approve the aspects of the left turn pocket and how long it needs to be and all the criteria for that. And now we're in that design phase for that. And the sidewalk considerations are on our mind. Yes, absolutely.
Is it fair to say
Okay,
at
so
this
we'll
point-
consider this a work in progress and we'll revisit it at a future time.
Yeah. Yes, David. So Carl, is it fair to say that it's a mutual desire between the board and you as the applicant to see efficient pedestrian connectivity from this development to the rest of the town's infrastructure? You're working through ways of doing that right now, and we will revisit this discussion at a future meeting.
Generally, yeah, we're just trying to make it practicable to actually fit it in.
Is that a fair?
You summarized it perfectly.
Okay.
Stephen Doherty, DC Development. If we have the space, and we have the legal right to use that property, we're interested in connecting also, whether it be across the road or on this side of the road. If the town wants to do eminent domain or whatever they want to do, that's as long as we can legally do it, if we have the land.
So we will put this on the list for follow-up at a future meeting.
And Rob, if I forget, remind me to talk to Ed and town folks as well.
Are we good to continue with the Verdantis memo into their general comments? Before I do that, are there any questions or comments from members of the public in the room or online for what we have covered so far in the meeting? Yes, ma'am.
Tim mentioned at the April meeting, he brought up questions about what he put in his memo. Because that was brought up at the April meeting, should that be addressed? Should that have gone to Verdantis, or is that different because he did the memo as well? Because you asked if there was any other planning board comments.
Yeah, that'll come up when we get to that section in the site plan review regs.
Okay.
It's dealing with recreation.
Okay. Yes, sir. State your name, please, and
If I can stand up here. I'm Gerald Tice, and I have two suggestions for you. One is, why don't you consider the possibility of snow blowing instead of plowing on the roads in that development? That will spread the snow around all over the place. My snow blower blows it 30 feet out in the fields. Maybe there are places on the walkways where you can't do that because you don't have that space on either side. But there you can use a smaller scoop. The other thing is, as far as getting the connectivity between the town and the development, you could also build a pedestrian bridge over Fore and connect to the sidewalks on the other side of Fore. And that would allow people to safely get across Fore and then go down the sidewalks on that side, which has a larger space to do it. Those are just something that I think you should look into.
thank you. Let's continue. It is 10 minutes to 8. I don't know how long members of the board want to go tonight. In my mind, I was thinking it would be great if we could start trying to wrap up, at least as far as we would get tonight, by about 9, unless there was mutual agreement to continue. I'll still keep that as the target, but as we get closer to that, we can talk about how late we would like to go tonight, but we still have some time on the clock here. It's not even quite 8 o'clock yet. Let's go into general and site-wide comments from Verdantis. These are their comments in bullet point form. No subdivision application received, condominium suggested on application form and in plans. Do we want to do these one by one, or do we want to read through the group of these bullets and then let Carl respond to the group?
Seems more efficient.
Okay, let's do the group of these bullets, because and then we'll go to the sheet-specific comments. Second bullet, coordinate with Granite State Electric regarding proposed grade changes within the existing utility easements and verify whether parking is permitted within those easements. Suggest applicant be requested to provide written documentation that such parking is permitted. Third bullet point, applicant should provide construction details for the proposed box culvert and head walls associated with the wetland crossing, including size, wing wall dimensions, manufacturer, etc. Fourth bullet, provide profiles for all closed drainage systems and force main lines. Fifth bullet, verify that the proposed use complies with the intent and limitations of the existing access easement across lot 48-2. Next bullet, add legends to all plans for clarity and consistency. Next bullet, pave the secondary access road and add a note specifying year-round maintenance responsibility. Next bullet, add stormwater treatment areas for the secondary access road. Next bullet, provide additional dumpster capacity. Recommend applicant provide at a minimum 2 10-yard dumpsters per apartment building and 2 2-yard dumpsters per 8 townhouse units located within reasonable walking distance. Next bullet, add road names to the plans for emergency response and wayfinding. Next bullet, clarify ultimate roadway/driveway designation, town, private, or other. Next bullet, provide executed easements or agreements for all work proposed within or across town-owned parcels may be a condition of approval. Final bullet, include typical details and information on the plans for all applicable infrastructure elements. And at this point, Carl, I would welcome you to come up and address those bullet points.
Okay. Subdivision application is one form. Typically, that's for a true subdivision of fee simple lots. But per the RSA, this is a condominium development for a portion of it, and that would be condo docs and a condo site plan. But it is by RSA a form of subdivision. So I don't think you had that as a separate form, but it was more of a logistical thing. But certainly it is effectively a subdivision through condo, not fee simple. But that's really a legal thing with the John Cronin can work out through town staff.
Okay.
I'm going to go as fast as I can here right now. If I
Sure.
go too fast, let me know. The Granite State Electric stuff is through a JUA. It's called a Joint Use Agreement, and Granite State Electric, they absolutely review those plans, and we design those plans. We do a lot of these utility quarter crossings where there's certain things that are not allowed, certain things are, and those designs meet those criteria. But it would be a conditional item in your approval that you would have a joint use agreement and authorization from the utility company that owns the rights to that power easement, and anything that we have under that power easement is to their specification, which it is.
Okay.
Could I interrupt?
Yes, go ahead.
So you've agreed that's a conditional item, and just wondering if we have a process in place, Rob, to start listing our conditions that are going to be listed, for final approval.
Typically, we would start that list as a draft, and then it would be a living document through the next month or two, where you guys can add to it, or take away, or modify. And usually, it's resting with Rob's office, but it's usually a Word doc that just keeps refining as you go. So any conditional items that you might want to put on there, it gets reviewed and it worded appropriately. So then you pop. These conditional approval items don't just pop out of the air all of a sudden.
Right.
There could be like 30 conditions, but every single one of them is crafted so that it protects the town and the process that we're going through.
Yeah, it's just who drafts that. So that's Rob.
And we can assist with that, so that just to get the ball rolling, and we respect that process, absolutely.
Okay, so it seems like it'd be good if we had a draft of the conditions that we've talked about so far at each meeting, and we just, so that we can just continue to add to it. Keep things in mind.
Yeah, so real document.
Stuff we've covered.
I would agree.
Sorry.
There's some typical details that we added a typical detail for the box culverts, but those are actually, they're open bottom culverts. They're not full boxes. That's an environmental plus. But typically those are required through the construction process with engineered shop drawings. But that's, again, part of the conditions. But we will add, we've added an isometric of a typical one that we've done many times. But that's through the DES process. But there would be more conditions added to that. We're not required to actually design every piece of every wing wall on that culvert system, but you need, we have it on the plan, but we don't have, the rebar and exact dimensions and anything just yet, but we're getting close to that. But that would be a shop drawing review process prior to issuance of any construction permit. It would also be embedded in the wetland permit, so you're kind of like double and triple belt and suspenders there for your conditions. Profiles of drainage and force mains, we've provided those in the plans now. Those are done. The existing access easement, we had some guest parking in there, but that's, I think we removed it because it's just, we talked about that earlier with the board. But that easement does allow access, and the owner of the land that easement lies on, it's off Maple Street, also wanted that to be confirmed that, he would have access to that as well. And I believe that was always contemplated. That would be written into the legal docs that John is starting now. Legends were added. There was a comment about paving the secondary access road, which is the emergency access drive. We did include, it's now an official 20-foot wide emergency access drive per NFPA standards. It doesn't necessarily have to be paved. We'd rather not have the pavement. It would be designed as a gravel access way to NFPA standards. But we certainly still have treatment through that, whether it's gravel or pavement. With the AOT, AOT gives you panelized treatment credit if you're going through wooded wetlands or wooded or even vegetated wetlands. There's certain credits that they allow for sheet drainage, especially for an emergency access drive, which is very, very lightly used.
Can I just pause there for a second? Because I do think that's something we should get some. It's unfortunate Verdantis isn't here tonight because they could offer their context for why they made that suggestion. I don't have that context. I'm not saying whether gravel or paved is the right solution or not. It seems to be, engineering judgment. I don't know what their engineering judgment for recommending pavement was or not.
I think we should ask Rob to ask them.
But I think that all of these general and site-wide comments should probably, and how they're being addressed, and the two that we've already talked about as proposed conditions, the joint use agreement and the details for the box, we should verify that, that addresses Verdantis's concerns as well, if those are conditions. So I think, Rob, I guess moral of the story, I think everything we're about to talk about here with this set of general and site-wide bullets and the proposed response to them should be verified through Verdantis's next task
Because Verdantis is not here, and or perhaps none of us are qualified to speak to their report, would it make more sense for Dubay Group to respond in writing to this list to Verdantis, and then we could review that response?
Yeah, or at least, I do think that would be good.
We keep getting caught up on the same thing.
Right.
I can't comment on why they thought it should be paved, so.
They had an engineering reason to.
Precisely.
To suggest that. We don't know what that is, but yeah.
Carl can address it in writing, and then Verdantis can respond.
We will do that. As a matter of fact, we wanted to have a meeting with them and Rob just to go through the final items, and that would be one of them.
Yeah.
And we would address these in writing as well.
So an in-writing response to each of these site-wide comments that summarizes what you are telling us right now as each of these bullet points, that the review of that would then be part of the next Verdantis task.
Rather than him tell us and we say,
Yep.
And I guess I would request, just thinking ahead, whenever this hearing ultimately gets continued to sometime, presumably in July, we should try to have Verdantis here. Because I do think that would be beneficial to the discussion, because we don't have the context for some of these things.
No, I totally agree. Support that process.
So, yes.
Can I follow up on this secondary access roads? Question about the gate location and the parking that we discussed before. This may not be the time, up to you.
Go ahead.
Okay. I see there's a gate at the top of the road.
two gates, I think, Tim? Two gates?
There is?
I think so.
Okay.
That was my recollection.
Are there 2 gates?
Tim is checking. I know that the landowner requested for us to move the bottom gate up further so that he could have direct access through that area,
Yeah.
joint access without having to go through a fire department controlled gate.
Yeah.
And we said we would do that. I can't remember if we actually moved the gate, but.
Yeah, I don't think we have yet, but we can.
Okay, but we will definitely do that.
Okay, and then there was a discussion about whether or not we should have some public parking there on the downhill side of that gate, the lower gate.
I think that there might be an easement legal issue with introducing public parking on an access easement, and we prefer not to have that.
Well, perhaps up beyond the easement?
Beyond,
Well,
That would depend on where the gate's located.
There's a wetland there.
yeah, there's a wetland there also, so it would be hard to put extra parking.
well, and I suppose it's a question for the board. We initially asked to have some public parking so that folks could access, but ultimately it might be some kind of trail system up there. Do we still want to push that issue?
Yes, go ahead.
As I recall, the public comments came back that
One
they were,
comment.
right, that they were not in favor of a public area because of potential vandalism.
Yeah, so we got one comment from one individual about that.
For the record.
You have to weigh that up amongst, the pros and cons of that issue. So I'm just asking the board, is that something we want
I think there's guest parking within the development.
Yes,
So,
especially
I
at
guess
the clubhouse, and that's
Come
where
up and park there and walk on the
to? Well,
trails.
so if someone who's not related at all to any of the residents up there, is there a place to park?
I mean, it gets into a lot of liability insurance issues.
Figure it out.
Every development gets into that. I mean, we're not babysitters, and there will be vandalism, there will be, I mean, we've all done it when we were young, and going out and trying to drink beer in the middle of the woods and parking and, all that stuff, but it probably, it just gets into a whole host of issues, even with the conservation easement and the review and management of that, and protection of that. I think I heard pretty clearly there were more than one resident on Maple Street. They're all like, I don't know, maybe I heard this, maybe I was dreaming, but they said, we don't want people parking next to our house and like walking in and messing around. They want some semblance of privacy. And we have over half of our project in conservation, and if someone wants to walk through there, they will. We're not gonna fence it off, but I don't think we should be forced to invite it, especially when the access easement that's deeded, I don't believe that it contemplates public parking within the easement.
How does the board feel about that? Not sensing any strong opinions.
I'm against it. I'm against public parking, for the record.
To me, it's more a matter of, is the conservation area going to be open to the public as a current use type of recreational area, or is it strictly a no-build type of?
It gets into connectivity issues, like, we don't believe there are deeded public trails that connect into our lands. I mean, there's property owners here that abut us, and would they want people parking next to their land or on their land or walking through it as a public right, and then they gotta deal with all that. I know there's RSAs that somewhat protect that, but we don't see the public trails being warmly, legally invited on our abutting properties. And so it would be tough for us to do that, and then, unless they were all doing it, but.
Right, I mean, if there's gonna be trails on your property, they're gonna be more geared towards the people that live there.
And just
Versus,
informal trails.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ben, did you have a question?
No, I was going to comment as someone who lives in this sort of environment that I would want my privacy as someone who lived there, and wouldn't really want to encourage the general public to be parking and walking through my limited yard.
Jason?
Just for information purposes, there is a trail at the top of the ridge line. I don't know if the property goes up there or not.
It doesn't, we have to cross other abutters to get there. On the trail. I'll point out that the town owns a tiny little lot at the, you can see this at the bottom of your other easement, which isn't going to be developed, right? That's.
We're not, I mean, that's across the street, Maple Street, I think that's the former colonization facility,
Exactly.
and,
It's not even, gosh, it's point, no,
We would have to check on the allowed uses of that property.
Is that, the town, are you suggesting that the town-owned lot there could provide a parking?
there's room for probably 4 cars.
That would essentially be a select board decision.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that's allowed, given the way that was donated to the town. We would have to check, because that was donated to the town for a specific purpose.
I'd like to see the privacy of the people over there, have the privacy protectors, personally.
I agree, Bill.
And I'm not gonna die on this hill, I just, the board felt strongly one way or the other, I'm happy with that.
So consensus of the board is okay with no public parking. Yes. Okay, we have that consensus. Let's move on. Carl, we left off at add stormwater treatment areas.
and I mentioned stormwater treatment of the emergency access road. AOT allows you to have treatment credits off that. We do have cross drainage on there, protection swales and all of that other stuff, and get vegetated in. But they allow panelized treatment. I think, Tim, there's a technical name for that, but that's what we'll be doing on that, and that meets the AOT criteria. Dumpster capacity, we did add the dumpsters as they recommended for the apartment complex, and we have upsized the clubhouse area and dumpsters and everything around the clubhouse. You'll see that is robust, very nice area. And on the dumpsters for the townhouses, we decided to, again, it's a security issue and everything, but if you own a townhouse or you're renting in a townhouse and you have a garage and all that stuff, you have your little exclusive use area in the front yard, we would be having private pickup of recyclables and trash by a vendor that takes care of the whole neighborhood all at once. So they would have little hand carts and all of that stuff. And now they offer a white glove service and everything else, but that would be done by vendor. We didn't want to have dumpsters serving townhouse units because those get kind of messy and people dumping other stuff in there and people don't get up, we have the ability to have private vendor service right at the front door for each townhouse unit. But the dumpster comments, we took care of all of those as listed as they described. Road names, per E911, the main road would be named. That process is a naming function for that process, even though they're private roads, but still the EMS departments get involved in that. So all these roads will have names to them, and we have to go through the process of review and everything. So, there's not a road name that's selected that sounds like another one in town, that type of thing. But yes, they would have names. The ultimate designation of all of these would be private drives. And the attorneys can work that out. There's RSAs on private roads, but this is really a site plan with private drives, so that would all be reviewed by the town council as well. They would not be public roads in terms of, having the public accept an area of road and all of a sudden start maintaining it or whatever. That's not going to happen. There's language that goes on the plans that get recorded that prohibit that. Typical details on all applicable. We've added a lot of more details and to what they asked for in the specific sheet listings and details. And I'm sure there's going to be more. If they ask for more, we'll be doing it. That's the last general set of bullets, and then you went into the specific sheet reviews.
We haven't quite gotten in there yet, but we will. So just to close the loop here, all of those bullet points for general and site-wide comments, you will provide, Carl, or your team will provide written responses to those along with noting conditions where it may be applicable, and Verdantis will review those responses as part of their next task order. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Questions from the board on any other items on that kind of second half of the list of bullet points that Carl just walked through? Questions from members of the public, in-house or online, as it relates to the general and site-wide comment bullet points that we just walked through? Yes, ma'am.
Shirley Green. I just had a comment on the recommendation for the gravel on the emergency access road. That's gravel is a lot more environmentally friendly.
Any other comments? Yes.
Hi, Sharon Bouquet, Enfield. I want to address the discussion about the access road being paved or unpaved. It seems, first of all, if you look at a map of wetlands and you look at the wetland fingers that are back in the part of the property where the access road is, there's several wetland fingers through that section of property. And my understanding was, from earlier discussion, was that gravel was chosen as the less disturbance of wetlands and the drainage off those slopes. And then something to consider that I think anybody could suggest Maple Street as having traffic onto it from that access road where you paved, is there's no back access to Maple Street except for a road that is a gravel road that's probably seasonal, that after several miles ends up somewhere in Hanover. So I think Maple Street is really not a road you want to pour a lot of traffic onto, because we're stuck. We're landlocked of the residents who live there now. We join with the traffic from May Street, but also May Street is even worse because they have no back access at all. That ends onto somebody's property. So I would be really hard pressed. We can't get out onto Route 4. And that's a problem for Maple Street and just 64 residences from Maple Street and May Street. You pave a road and have up to 500 cars or 200 cars or 100 cars going down that road. It would be a nightmare for access. So thank you.
I'll just address quickly. I don't think the intention of that road is to be open. It's got a gate.
It's a gated road.
Whether it's paved or not.
Yeah.
I would just really, things happen that roads aren't supposed to be used. They're less able to be used if they're gravel. Something's gated and sooner or later somebody needs a road and there it is and there it happens. So, and also I brought up the environmental issues about paving that road. So, that's my point.
Just for clarity, who in a gated access like this has the ability to open the gate? Is it the fire department and police department and EMS and the owner of the property and for maintenance purposes? Is there anybody else besides that that is envisioned to have the ability to open this gate? No. Okay. Any other questions on these bullet points from the public online? Anybody online? We're going to move on. We're going to move on to sheet-specific reviews. Sheet 24, Site Layout Plan F, the 18-foot drive aisle serving parking spaces and emergency egress routes accessed by Maple Street does not appear to meet the width required for two-way vehicle circulation and/or standard emergency vehicle access requirements of 20 feet per NFPA. Applicant should provide written approval from the fire department or authority having jurisdiction prior to board acceptance.
It is 20 feet. We just called it out as an 18-foot wide, but we actually pre-designed it for 20 feet and then some, even with shoulders beyond those. So we kind of knew that this comment might be coming up as a 20-foot NFPA and not ask for 24 inches of a waiver or anything like that. So it is 20 feet with shoulders beyond that on either side, and absolutely the authority having jurisdiction would be a combination of the fire chief and police chief and their designees, and that would be the gate operators and just all that with the locks and the extra provisions for emergencies and everything on that.
Okay.
And we would fully expect, once Verantis reviews all of this through Rob's office, we would reach out to the different entities like Grand State Electric, the fire chief, police chief, all of that to just consummate all of that before you see it next.
Mm-hmm. Any questions from the board on that? Sheet 28, grading and drainage plan B. 2 bullet points here. Grading and retaining wall construction encroach onto lot 47-1. A permanent easement from the town is required. And 2, proposed roadway crosses town-owned land. An easement or written agreement with the town is required prior to approval.
That is the square lot with the water tank sits on, and we addressed that earlier in the meeting.
Yep.
And those improvements have been made to the design, commensurate with what they're asking for here. The roadway, Laramie Farm Road, does cross through a very small corner of that, and we believe that the enabling approvals on that are in the intent and also in the easements that are already written on that, and we're going to be working through Attorney Cronin's office and the staff and the town attorneys to confirm all of that.
Any questions from the board related to those items? Seeing none. Sheet 39, grading and drainage plan M. Outlet protection extends beyond the limits of disturbance. Revise the limits or relocate outlet protection accordingly.
I believe we corrected that.
You have the updated plans reflect a correction there?
Yes, sir.
Any questions from the board on that item? Sheet 42, Laramie Farm Road profile. 2 comments here. Review vertical alignment to determine whether a larger K value can be achieved. Show underdrain piping on the profile, including daylight discharge locations.
So we did, the K values were actually reviewed by DOT on the approach. That's what Francis was looking for. And the DOT reviewed and approved that aspect. And it certainly, meets ASHTO requirements for this particular roadway. The underdrain piping, I think that's one item. That was one of the few items that we needed to put on the road profile, which is the underdrain system. Those are very easy to put on. They're shown on the plan, but we just have to show them on the profile. And the roadway in all cut areas is underdrained, absolutely.
Okay.
So we will add that to the profiles.
They also they outlet into the catch basin system.
Yes, and those all have daylight outlets and or catch basin outlets per standard road design criteria.
Questions from the board on those comments from Verdantis in response thereto? Sheet 43, emergency access drive profile. Review vertical alignment to determine whether a larger K value can be achieved for emergency access compliance. And then it cites an applicable site plan regulation, section 553.
Yeah, we intend to work with Verantis on that. We believe our K values are appropriate for an emergency access drive. They clear all large fire department apparatus, rolling stock, everything. And it minimizes the wetland impact. It's fully drained. We believe that a meeting with Verantis and a discussion on that, we would prove that the K values are correct. But we're always keeping an open mind with them, and we just want to, have that discussion with them.
Okay. Yes, Tim.
Just looking ahead here.
Don't jump ahead. That item. Sheet 43. Any questions on sheet 43?
Before you get to 45, I want to make a point.
All right, I'll indulge you. Go ahead.
Well, just to save time, 45, 46, and 48, that's completely between the town and the Verdantis and the developer. I don't think we need to go through that.
Well, let's just review. Let's review for the record, for the purpose of being comprehensive here and covering. We're going to go through them, Linda. So but I will cover all 3 of the next sections in one fell swoop, and we'll go from there. So sheet 45, sewer and utility plan A, provide water pump design details and revise plans to show fire service and fire lines servicing buildings with required sprinkler systems. Sheet 46, sewer and utility plan B, provide pump and pump chamber details with specifications. Provide a specific detail for SMH 25 showing force main connection to gravity sewer. Show force main cleanout with air release valve per environmental water quality regulation 70407G. Provide a force main profile showing elevations, connections, and minimum separations, and it cites applicable regulations both from state water quality regs as well as our own site plan review regulations. And then sheet 48, sewer and utility plan D, provide construction means and methods for installing sewer pipe on steep slopes, provide construction methods for sewer manholes deeper than 12 feet, provide profiles for all closed drainage runs to demonstrate minimum separation distances, provide oil water separator details, sizing calculations, and design rationale, provide sewer cleanout details. And they cite applicable regulations again. Carl, I welcome your commentary on those.
Generally, we either took care of all these comments or we had very, very minor final discussion items that we need to address with Variantis on exactly what they're looking for, because there are options. But they're all, the bulk of comments that you just listed are all standard DES or DOT construction specification type things and details that we would either have done or we want to wrap up with Variantis with discussion on what they'd like to see or preferred. There's 3 or 4 different ways to do a sewer manhole detail with the force main entry to that, and we just want to do it what they would feel comfortable with, and then make sure we implement that instead of making it up and asking them to review it.
So just like with the general comments that we walked through on the previous page with all of those bullet points for the site-wide comments, I think as part of the next Verdantis task order, the same thing should apply to these sheet level comments, where you would respond in writing to each of their sheet level comments, and Verdantis's review of those responses and any plan updates that may have resulted from those responses would be part of the next task order.
Yes.
Does that sound reasonable to everyone? Okay. Sheet 76. Erosion Control Plan C, slopes exceeding 20 feet in vertical height typically require benching. Provide a minimum 10-foot access area at the toe of the slope adjacent to tree lines for construction and maintenance. Install silt fence a minimum of 5 feet from wetlands to avoid disturbance. Identify and show temporary sediment basins. Carl, do you have any particular response to those items?
The same. We've either addressed them or we have some specific discussions that we need to have with them to implement their preferred methods, so that we don't get into, we want to just do what they want to do on these. This is very minor items, and we just want to wrap it up to their satisfaction.
Does the board? Yes, Tim, go ahead.
So on the erosion control, both Plan C and F, well, the entire erosion control stormwater management system, while that's being constructed, I'd like Verdantis to give us a recommendation as to what third-party inspection regime should be implemented. And the reason I'm particularly sensitive to this one is because of where it's located on the hill and all the drainage stuff that we've been talking about, people have expressed concerns about over the years. A critical time for that to get away from folks is when it's being built. And to have a town representative, a third-party hired engineer to look at that, I just don't know what to extent that should happen. Adequate. And I think we should ask Verdantis for some guidance on that.
Does the board agree?
Yeah.
That's actually required by law now with the EPA SWIP packaging for talking about construction phase, independent testing in reporting, the SWIP packaging and reporting and on-site inspections. That's all required now by the EPA through the SWIP process. I think Verantis will probably tell you that, and we agree with that, actually. We will follow that. I believe the gentleman might have had a handout here in the butter suggesting that, as well as long-term maintenance of the entire project, which would also be by professional vendors. Those recommendations we will absolutely follow, and we absolutely agree with them.
Okay, let's add that to Verdantis's task order, just so we have documentation of their recommendation on the record, and we can
fully agree.
Respond to that accordingly. Sheet 79, Erosion Control Plan F, outlet protection extends beyond the limits of disturbance and perimeter controls. Clearly call out double perimeter protection within 50 feet of wetlands. Any comments on that?
Agreed. I think we put it on the plan, but we want to just roll in the Verantis re-review and check the discussion on that.
Okay. Sheet 67, Landscape Plan E, review landscaping proposed on 2-to-1 side slopes to confirm successful installation and long-term viability. Sheet 68, Landscape Plan G, relocate trees shown within swale discharge alignments. Plan should be reviewed and sealed by a licensed landscape architect.
Yes, and yes. So we added the details for the slope plantings for trees, the standards for that, but landscape standards. Our landscape architect stamped the plans and finished the plans actually, and tweaked these comments and alignment to those comments. And we also added some buffering and some other elements. Overall, on the entire project, we updated all the landscaping. I think an abutter asked for some additional buffering, and we provided that on the plans as well.
Okay. Any comments from the board on any of the sheet level comments that we just reviewed on the previous 2 pages? Anything that we haven't already discussed? Any comments or questions from the public, either in person or online, on the sheet level comments that we have just reviewed over the past 2 pages? Yes, ma'am.
Gwen Desert, 18 Seymour Farm Drive. So Verdantis questioned the emergency access for emergency vehicles, and I'm wondering if the main access, if they looked at that as well, if that complies, because I know it, with what they were questioning, the K, I don't know what they were talking about, K something, K values or whatever, but I know it was discussed, I don't know, in the planning board meeting or zoning or something, that the main access would also be used, could be used for emergency vehicles. So I just want to make sure that the main access it also complies with emergency access.
I think that that's what they were saying in their sheet 42 comment that's called Laramie Farm Road Profile Review Vertical Alignment to determine whether a larger K value can be achieved. I think, so if we could scroll back up, Rob's gone, okay.
I thought that was.
Jason could scroll back up. I think that is what is being alluded to on sheet 42.
Oh, okay.
See, it was the K value comment is also on sheet 43, specific to the access road, but I think the same concept is there in sheet 42. Go ahead, Carl.
And yes, we will coordinate our response to the engineer and coordinate that review and move forward with that.
Any other questions on the sheet-specific items that we have just walked through? Members of the public. Online? Anybody online have questions? Jason, you're doing a fine job operating teams. All right, we are going to move on to the AOT application. So Verdantis's comments specific to the alteration of terrain application and stormwater report. The submitted stormwater report and plan set generally reflect a consistent stormwater management approach. However, additional information is required to demonstrate compliance with DES AOT requirements, Environmental Water Quality Regulation 1500, and the New Hampshire DES Stormwater Manual. The planning board may require the applicant to revise the HydroCAD model to clearly correspond with planned features including delineation of drainage areas, subcatchments, and outfalls to allow verification of peak flow results and consistency with Environmental Water Quality Regulation 1507. The planning board may require the applicant to revise the plans to fully align with the model and include all referenced stormwater elements and details. The planning board may require the applicant to reconcile soil conditions between the report and plan set and demonstrate the feasibility of proposed infiltration practices in accordance with Environmental Water Quality Regulation 1508, including provision of infiltration testing and confirmation of adequate separation to seasonal high groundwater. Key concerns. HydroCAD model does not clearly correspond to plan features. For example, nodes, subcatchments, and outfalls preventing verification of drainage areas and impervious assumptions. 2, the model and plan set are not fully coordinated, including references to features not shown on plans and missing filtration pond P6 detail. 3, soil mapping is inconsistent between report and plans, including generalized HSG-C assumptions versus mapped HSG-C and D and HSG-D soils. Infiltration feasibility is not demonstrated, including lack of infiltration testing and insufficient confirmation of seasonal high groundwater separation. We are into some very technical aspects of the AOT permit here. And Carl, I would invite your response to those specific technical questions.
When we received the comments, we jumped on this section immediately, and we actually provided a response memo already. I think it was on or about the time you had your last hearing, because we felt that strongly about it. It's all good news. We are moving forward on all of this stuff, but whoever reviewed the plan, we really strongly want to meet with them, because Tim is here, and we worked very hard on this, and he'd like to just summarize through this, because the requirements that they were looking for were either already shown on the plan and the calculations. Everything was matched with the model, and we do a lot of AOT work on many larger projects. There are a reason for every one of these items, and Tim can go through them just to wet your whistle on these if you like, because the responses are actually very artfully and technically clean. When they talk about soil conditions, there's a reason why we're supposed to use certain soil conditions in the worst case scenario, and we absolutely did do that. So if there are federal soils plans out there that say it's a soil X, and we find that it's a soil Y, we use the worst case scenario, and then overarching all of that is an AOT requirement that we have to use a standard that is even worse than that. So by default, we're doing the correct thing. So we would really, really like to meet with whoever reviewed this from Verantis standpoint and go through it, because we're very confident that we can come to a very quick conclusion on all of this stuff. But if you would like, Tim could actually give you a very quick.
Tim, if you could give us a high-level overview of how.
Very high.
Can I ask a question before we get too far down
Yes,
into
Ben.
this? Is this like a driveway permit? I mean, if they have to get an AOT permit, isn't all of this stuff covered by DES in the AOT permit such that we don't need to review it again? We simply need to say, in order to approve this, you have to get an AOT permit
Condition
from
of
DES.
approval.
Yes, exactly.
Well,
I'm not qualified to.
In Verdantis's preamble, there are 3, if not 4 items specifically where they are saying the planning board either can or should require the applicant to do something.
Well, I understand that, but is that covered by us saying you need an AOT permit from DES before we approve this?
No.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't think it
that's
is.
the
No,
question.
no, it's not, because what Verdantis is saying is that we can require the plans to match the model.
And the AOT doesn't do that?
No, because as-built often don't match what's built.
So the DES
So if they-
alteration of terrain permit does not require
It does not,
the plans
right,
to
they're
match the
they're
model?
not gonna make them draw specific plans, and we are going to do that. That's why it's.
I see.
We have no problem
Right.
taking care of these bullets
Yeah.
right now with
I
the
just want to make sure we weren't duplicating effort.
Yeah, with the Verantis review, we have no problem, because I think that you guys should see it,
Right.
and it should be resolved and verified. We feel very strongly about that. And you are right, sir, it is part of the OT permit, but for them to say certain things as part of the drainage design, as part of what you're reviewing, we absolutely will address these
Okay, again, I just want to make sure we weren't
Yeah,
duplicating.
we are. We're on the same page. I think we're doing the right thing by, being conservative. So
Tim, go ahead, and give us
By the way, Tim Laporte, I'm with the debate group for the record. To answer your question a little bit, but AOT will do this as well, but it's also the responsibility of the town as well as AOT to make sure that drainage measures are met properly. So I'll try to rattle through and I'll try to bore you with, not bore you too much with the technical information, but give you an overview. So for the HydroCAD model, they're saying that it does not correspond with the plans. So in the drainage report, there's pre and post development plans. So what we do is we take the current land and we model all of the water that would flow or that does flow onto our site. We chase it all the way up the hill and we account for all that water and we incorporate that in the set. And that's a part of the drainage report. It's not necessarily in the plans. So that information is in the drainage report at the end in the pre and post development plans. We have views at different scales to kind of show how does this whole thing work together and how does it work at a smaller, more intricate detail, especially because the plans themselves are pretty complicated. So trying to read that at 150 scale is not exactly easy, but so we have all of that on there, and I have a 475-page drainage report that goes through all these things. So the model and the plan set are fully 100% coordinated. I mean, every single invert that I have on the drainage model is also on the plan set. Every pipe size, every slope, all that information is all on both. As far as soil mapping goes, so there's a couple different types of soil mapping. One is what we call web soil survey. It's NRCS data, it's federal data. You can go anywhere in the country and say, what's the soil like in this area? And it'll give you an overview. So we have that. That's a requirement for AOT to put that in the requirements as well. The other thing that AOT requires is a site-specific soils map, which what happens then is our soil scientist goes onto the site while they're doing test pits, soil sample, collecting data. They go and they say, this soil here is this category. And that soils map kind of trumps, it's like more accurate than the federal overview of it. So we use in the HSG, hydrologic soil group, it goes A, B, C, D, where A is very well drained and D is poorly drained, or very poorly drained. So on the web soils, it said it was a CD. It's kind of a mix. And then our soil scientist went out and said that this is a C. So in our model, we used a C soil for all of our calculations. So the other thing with that is the infiltration feasibility. So AOT has, in the soil scientist data, they give you a soil classification. This is, here's an example, this is a stissing soil. It's one of the soils on our site that the soil scientist called out. You then go to, there's state lookup tables, which has default rates for infiltration. And it gives you a range. So what AOT allows you to do is, so in that range, they allow you to take the lowest end of the range and then a factor of safety of 2. So for that soil, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's a 0.6 to a 2 inches per hour of an infiltration rate. So then what they require is use the lowest one, so the 0.6, and then factor of safety of 2, so we use a 0.3 inches per hour. So it's very conservative as far as that goes. So all of these things have been and are implemented in our plan set. I mean, we would be happy to go through with Verdantis and meet and go through these as well.
So, Tim or Carl, it sounded like you have prepared a written response to this particular set of comments from Verdantis.
Yeah.
And has that been provided to Verdantis, Rob, that memo, do you know?
I think we had addressed this a couple days after you sent the memo. I don't know if it's been sent to Verdantis or not.
Okay. It seems like, Verdantis, whoever reviewed it from Verdantis had a reason for presenting these comments. We don't know, you're confident in your analysis. These are things that could probably be worked out in a discussion. And so I would suggest that discussion happen between you and Verdantis to figure out where the disconnect may be in this particular set of comments. In any case, Rob, this is something obviously we will want on the next task order to make sure there's resolution here following that discussion. Beyond that, is there anything that the planning board members would like to offer on this topic? Thank you, Tim, for that overview.
Yeah.
No, okay. Anything from members of the public, in person or online, on the topic of these AOT comments? Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask about your comment on the soil types. Usually, I saw your soils map and it would be like 361C.
Yep.
Okay. And then there's the soil conservation, NRCS. They use a different set of, which defines what kind of soil it is. And the 300 whatever doesn't, I don't see how that does that. And why did you not use the NCRS federal? And it also gives you the slopes in the number. So why did you particularly just use that, the other one? I've never heard of it, what you did say, but.
Okay, well, direct the questions to me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And what was your name for the record?
Celia Piero.
Okay. So would you like to respond to that question?
Yeah, so essentially, as far as, there's kind of two parts, one's the soils and one's the slopes. So as far as the soils go, there's a lot of soils that are pretty close in the scheme of how they go, and there's a different numbering system. There's high-intensity soil survey, there's site-specific soils, with high-intensity soils, which, actually, I don't know if the web soils talks about that, but, so I won't confuse you with that. But there's different there's different numbers for different soils, and they're not necessarily in any particular order, to my knowledge. So, you know, what could be a 340 on the web soils and a 960, I'm just throwing out random numbers here, but they could be more closely related than just the fact that they're not close on the numbering scale. And as far as the slope aspect goes, web soils has a general slope. They use ranges. We have 2-foot contours with a site that has been surveyed. So we use the slope information that we have from our surveyor that is more accurate than the web soils version. As is, the soils are also more accurate. We had a soil scientist go out on site, test the soil, dig test pits, do all that stuff, and write a report for that, which is, his report is also in our drainage report as well.
Yes, ma'am.
So you have a.
Direct the question to me.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
So there's the soil scientist test results that he did. I think my concern is that because of the hillside, that we make very sure that the water is able to come down without a lot of force, because if it's this wetland soil, it slows the water.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'd like to find more about with the 361 or wherever it is.
Okay. Well, we will revisit this topic because it will be in the next task order for Verdantis to review. So we will have an entire follow-up discussion as it relates to this particular set of comments, which hopefully will shed some light on and answer those remaining questions that you have. Are there any other questions from the public, in person or online, on the AOT permit comments from Verdantis? All right, it is almost 8:45. We're getting through this Verdantis memo tonight. We're getting through it. We're going to go on to public comment letter review. So public comments that were submitted in writing in the form of a letter. Here we have inserted the public comments as received. Verdantis' response follows in bold with applicable regulatory citations noted parenthetically. Number 1, minimize construction traffic during peak travel hours and school drop-off and pickup. Verdantis' response, construction traffic management may be required to address safety concerns. Recommended planning board action, requires submission of a construction traffic management plan subject to planning board review and approval. Carl, welcome your comments on that.
That would be reasonable.
Okay.
one thing here. The writer of the memo talked about school drop-off and pickup times. I'd also like to just get the board's sense of the idea that I think has always been prevalent, that the emergency access drive not be used as a primary construction access to the site, and primarily because of the narrowness and relatively poor quality of Maple Street. Lots of construction traffic up and down that street, that sort of thing. Now, obviously, they've got to construct the emergency access drive, and there's no other way to do it, and then there's utilities that have to be installed into there as well, and it's certainly fair game, but generally speaking, I feel like Maple Street should just not be used as a primary construction access.
Is there consensus among the board as it relates to that recommendation from Verdantis that we require submission of a construction traffic management plan?
Yes, that seems prudent.
Anybody disagree with that? Okay. Then we are requesting a construction traffic management plan.
Yes, sir.
And then once we see that, we can consider that comment in the context of what's submitted.
Well, yes, I mean, in terms of giving some guidance to developers of what the board is thinking about that topic, that's all I'm suggesting at this point. But I don't know that the rest of the board agrees with me.
I would prefer to be able to respond to a draft and consider those questions in the context of a draft.
Yeah, primary access, hours of operation, number of vehicles, type of thing. You know, how many dump trucks per hour gonna be, you know, just general stuff like that. Just give us some baseline to know what we're dealing with when construction starts.
Probably gonna vary based on the phase.
That would be typical to a construction access
Yeah.
management plan that we can put together with Stephen and submit it for review. Yeah.
Thank you. If there are no other questions from the board, I'll move on to the next item. Number 2, requesting an opaque buffer from the water tower to about halfway down the property line towards Route 4. Opaque buffer meaning from ground to 6 feet in height with intermittent vegetation from 6 to 30 feet in height, 1 shade tree or evergreen and 1 understory tree per 300 square feet with evergreen shrubs to exclude all visual contact from ground to 6 feet tall. I didn't mention this at the 4/22/26 meeting, but I did mention it during a previous meeting to have the buffer not just installed but maintained. Verdantis's response: buffering may be required to ensure compatibility with Enfield Site Plan Review Regulations 5.3 and 5.17. Recommended planning board action: if the board intends to require landscape or other buffering, board should consider requiring detailed landscape or buffer plan and long-term maintenance provisions. Carl, I would welcome any thoughts you have about this particular, and then we'll.
There are 2 parts to this. At the very end was talking about the landscape plan and details and long-term maintenance provisions. We'd like to have Verdantis review the latest round of upgrades that we have done to the landscape plans and details, including maintenance notes and all of that stuff. We welcome the opportunity to meet with them and to discuss all of that overall for the global project. More specifically to the first comment about a specific strip suggested by an abutter, we would agree with that, but we just have to work through the details. When you say, you know, words like you won't be able to see anything, you know, at all at any angle, it's very, very difficult to do that with landscaping. But we certainly understand. We believe we understand the abutter. I believe that the abutter should probably have a conversation with Mr. Cronin, who's sitting right there, at some point to talk about all of these and other related items that the butter had, and we'd be happy to meet with that butter and go through all of these concerns. We did upgrade that strip of landscaping for a performance type of buffer, but we would like to have that correspondence or that interaction on the other items that were related to those requests.
Okay. Is the board okay with that approach in that this would be something that Verdantis can review in the updated plan set and respond accordingly? Is that all right? Make sense, Carl? Yeah.
Yes.
Any other thoughts on this topic before we move on? Let's go on. Number 3, request for interconnecting driveway easements. On February 9th, 2026, I sent an email to Steve Doherty and Carl Dubé requesting this in anticipation of them submitting a final site plan application. This is per Article 5, Section 515 of the Site Plan Review Regulations. February 18, 2026, I forwarded this email to Rob Taylor after realizing I never included him on the original. I also mentioned this during the 10/22/2025 Planning Board meeting. Verdantis' response: interconnections are required where feasible in accordance with Enfield Site Plan Regulation 5.515. Recommended planning board action: require acceptable interconnection or written waiver justification. Carl, I feel sorry you keep getting down and getting up and getting down and getting up, but you're getting your exercise in today.
I want to try to keep myself short. That's why, but it's hard. We generally agree with the notion of interconnections, obviously, because it's suggested in the regulations. We've studied this area. We would invite now that we've had a round of review of design and review, we would, if the abutter has any suggestions that she could, let Attorney Cronin know what those suggestions are. We have some specific suggestions on that probably, but I think that she just needs to reach out to, now that we have the design and one round of review, we're ready to look at that.
Nate, I'm sorry, I don't understand what she's asking for.
I don't either.
Not
Okay.
You don't, what did you say?
I don't understand what driveway interconnections are. I apologize.
So my property's on the east side
Yep.
of theirs. So being able to come off of their road to the back of my property.
I see.
Easement to
I see,
get to the
okay.
back of the property.
Okay,
there.
thank you, yeah.
Basically a right of way.
Got it, okay, appreciate that.
So it sounds like that is something that you're open to having a discussion with. That discussion should happen between the abutter and the applicant's attorney. And then we would be able to identify whether an acceptable interconnection has happened according to the site plan regulations. See the general attorney,
Yeah,
please,
John
thank you.
Cronin again for the record. The regulation for interconnection of driveway is usually done when there's landlocked opportunities, right? So that people can get across and they're not landlocked. When a property generally has their own access, it's usually not required or subject to a waiver. Notwithstanding that, happy to have a conversation with a neighbor and see if there's an easy way to do it. I'm not sure that there is. I don't want to commit on the record that it's a done deal or that it's an obligation, but happy to have that conversation. If we can make her happy and it doesn't interfere with the project, we'll seriously consider it.
Kurt.
Yeah, my understanding that section of our regulations is designed for two developments, subdivisions happening side by side, that there's a connector between the two, or two commercial parking lots abutting each other, that there's a connector between the two, so you don't have to go up into, like 12A, go up into Route 4 when you want to go 20 feet to the next shopping plaza, type of
Or where
situation.
McDonald's refused to connect their sidewalk to Burger King.
Yeah.
Next door.
Yeah, and second.
Which happened,
Yeah.
not far from here.
And my other concern is that this is a private road being asked to be connected to a private driveway. Which to me is sort of like, the regulation wasn't written for that type of situation.
That could limit the possibility of what she could do with her property.
No,
not in
she,
this
if she,
case.
The property hasn't
that's
changed.
if any abutting property comes in with a site plan review, we're gonna say, and it matches up with the existing roads in their development, now those roads are private. So that sort of eliminates the town saying, you shall connect.
Yeah, I'm having trouble seeing what the public interest here is, how that's served with that requirement. And I think it's so vaguely written that it, in a case like this, I don't see how we could require that the developer provide an interconnection to this adjacent property. However, if they work out an agreement between them, and certainly
Right,
nobody's
encourage that
Any private
interconnection.
agreement that you guys have, hey, that's your deal.
Yep.
But-
Gentlemen, this gentleman says, I mean, the genesis of that regulation, not only in your ordinance, but most of them, was the cul-de-sac. You know, unless you live on a cul-de-sac, which you love and you want to keep private, a good planner will tell you that cul-de-sacs are not ideal, and you always want to have access to make interconnectivity through your community. So that regulation usually requires, when you build the bulb of the cul-de-sac, you'll leave that reserve strip so you can connect from neighborhood to neighborhood and utilize all the streets in the community. So I think the ask here is inconsistent with the regulation, but I stand by my word that we'll have the conversation and see what the interest is and how it may work.
I mean, obviously Verdantis isn't here. All we can do is take Verdantis at the words we have written on the page. Their recommended action was to require acceptable interconnection or written waiver justification. We don't have context for that recommendation. Suffice it to say, it sounds like a conversation will happen. And I think we see where that conversation goes, and
Well, we can consider the merits of a waiver request.
and potentially ask Verdantis for clarification on what their intent was behind that comment or that recommendation when they are here, hopefully next time. Does that sound reasonable? Number 4. 2 wells on the developer's property are not on the maps submitted in the application as required by the site plan application requirements. Both of these wells are wetlands, and neither of these were discussed during the ZBA hearing for the special exception for wetland crossing. Verdantis response: plans must identify utilities including wells. Recommended planning board action: require updated plans showing all wells and utilities. Carl, are there 2 wells missing from your plans?
I think the abutter mentioned that there are 2 wells. I think we found one, and we just have to go out there and look again. I think they were hand dug. There are other monitoring wells that were put out there many decades ago, so I don't know if you're calling that a well, but I think we stumbled across 1 or 2 of them, stone, shallow, hand dug in the wetlands. They wouldn't meet any well criteria now, and we would just leave them alone or gently fill them in so someone doesn't trip over them. But I believe we have a right to fill in a well, even if it's in the wetlands. But they're very, very small. They're like a hand-dug stone line thing. They're very tiny, I believe. But we'll check again if that's a technical requirement. We'll actually go out there. Maybe if the abutter could point on a map to Rob where she thinks they are, then we would verify them and look at them. It's just a technicality.
I mean, at the end of the day, if there are wells that are supposed to be shown, we want to make sure they're shown, right?
Ancient.
Yeah. Again, I don't have context for this personally, but
We'd request that just so we can verify and make them safe so someone doesn't trip over them. But we're not using them and they're not operable.
Verdantis's recommendation here is to require updated plans showing all wells and utilities. So Kurt, go ahead. Kurt?
Yeah, I just, more of a personal comment, my personal preference. If you do locate the dug wells, the hand dug rock line wells, instead of filling them in from a historical point of view, if you just cap them with a concrete cover like they put on the shallow wells that people use. I mean, I understand the safety issue, every cellar hole out there has a dug well somewhere around it. And when you go poking around, you have to be looking where you're going, stepping. But just as an historical point of view, because once they're gone forever. That's all. It's just,
We'll coordinate that through town staff then, and,
yeah.
you know, measure the depth or the width, and if they're very, very like tiny-ish, that's one thing. If they're a work of art, then obviously we would protect them. Yes.
Yeah, it's just because I'm just an historical point of view, that's all.
I will take a question here. Go ahead, ma'am.
Can I add to that? So
Yes.
to add to the historical value, I have 6 wells on my property, which do have historical value. They did provide a lot of the town water years ago. So I would be surprised if the 2 that are right by the water tower did not also do that. The one that's on the northern side of our property may not have, but I know ours has historical value. They may not be huge, but they did provide water down High Street to the town.
Members of the board, what is your pleasure as it relates to this item?
They should comply with the regulation, which they show the wells on the plan.
Okay.
Beyond that, I don't think we have a lot of authority to tell them what to do with them.
All right, Carl, does that make sense to you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Number 5. Wetland impact around the water tower was not included in the special exception from the ZBA regarding wetland crossing. I brought it up at the Conservation Commission meeting 11/7/24, as well as during the ZBA hearing 11/12/24, and asked if the town had to request a special exception as well for the wetland impact on their property. I was advised the town doesn't have to come to the ZBA about their land because they can violate zoning if they want. I then asked if the developers could get approval to disturb the wetlands on the town's land and was advised they could as long as it doesn't impact the easement use. Please review the warranty deed that was filed with the special exception as it states, Book 3056, page 422, including without limitation the restriction that there shall be no further alteration of wetlands for lot development, driveways, culverts, or for septic setback. Verdantis response, wetland impacts governed by zoning/state permitting, zoning section 4061, site plan regulations 563, recommended planning board action require written confirmation of compliance with zoning and state wetland permits. Carl.
Okay. So the book and page reference was, I believe, referring to in the older development. There was a subdivision approval here at some point, and that included a lot of wetland impacts actually, and the wetland permit usually goes with that, and at the time that was issued, they would typically have a requirement that no further wetland impacts on the property would be advanced. That assumes that if that project went forward. That project never went forward. They didn't do the work. It's not a subdivision there anymore. It was basically rendered moot. But I believe that if the Verdantis comment is asking for written confirmation with zoning and state wetland permits, I think I can work with Attorney Cronin and produce the documentation and response on that Verdantis can review, and town staff, town legal counsel can review. But I believe that was the reference that was made on that for a moot wetland permit that was never advanced.
That seems like an appropriate path forward to me. Does the board concur with that?
And the other part of that was, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Was the aspect of the improvement to the tank proper area that we're providing to the town. There's a ditch that was dug around the tank that technically is a man-made ditch, but technically has a wetland in it. But we're not touching that ditch anymore, I believe, with this new design. We stayed completely away from it. But we still have the wetland impact associated with the seasonal ditch that comes through that area that we are getting over with our road access, which provides access to the tower as well. So all of that could be clumped into a legal response and technical response with Attorney Cronin to the town and Verantis to confirm these aspects.
I think that sounds appropriate. A legal response that could be reviewed by Verdantis and our town council to cross that T and dot that I would be, I think, a good path forward. Let's continue with number 6. I mentioned that the town had done a water asset study and it listed the land around the water tower as a critical asset. In 2019, Horizons Engineering prepared a water department assessment management plan, and it cites the water tower land as a medium risk asset with a high consequence of failure but a low probability of failing. I mentioned this during the ZBA hearing on 11/12/24. Verdantis's response: municipal infrastructure protection falls under drainage and site design standards. Recommended planning board action: required demonstration of no adverse impact to town infrastructure. Additionally, the planning board may require written statement denial authorization from the town of applicant. That might be the town or applicant is probably what they were trying to say there. We have talked about the land around the water tower a couple of times today, and there are changes on the updated plans that probably further mitigate some of the concern here. I don't have anything to add beyond that. We've already kind of discussed this. Does anybody else have anything to add to this topic based on the wording of this comment? No. Number 7. I mentioned the number of units proposed is more than what zoning allows. I have mentioned this during ZBA meetings and at least one planning board meeting. The acreage for the development is listed as being 74.995 acres per site plan maps submitted with the application. 4 townhomes will not be on municipal sewer, so they require 1 acre per unit. Approximately 1.6 acres is in the CB district, which does not allow multifamily housing and should not be included in the calculations for the number of units built. Based on this, only 281 units are allowed. Verdantis response: density governed by zoning, section 400, regulations unclear, not specific for guidance where portions of parcel do not have water and sewer. Recommended planning board action: require formal zoning compliance determination from the land use administrator or zoning board of adjustment. There are a couple of things here that Verdantis doesn't mention that are moving parts related to particularly the allowance of multifamily housing in commercial business districts. There is a law now recently passed, going into effect, I believe, July 1st. It will become RSA 674-80, that the state has mandated that any district that allows commercial businesses that are served by water, sewer, and roadway infrastructure must allow by right multifamily housing. And that is a statewide regulation now. My understanding is, and actually, is David still on the call here? David, I'm going to ask you to weigh in on your recent inquiry on this particular question. David. He had unmuted. There he is. Okay.
Okay, there we go. I did ask that question of the legal counsel at the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and it was his opinion that because the statute goes into effect on July 1, and we have not yet made a decision, and likely will not make a decision before July 1, then that statute would apply. So what that means, I think, is that we have to treat all of the southernmost lot as multifamily by right. And the calculations should be done accordingly. Now that leaves us with the question of the 4 lots on Maple Street. And I am told, and Carl, maybe you could confirm this, that you have decided to put those townhouses on Maple Street on municipal sewer. Is my informant correct on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so basically what we're looking at then is all of the units would be subject to the quarter-acre per unit mathematical calculation. And if we, here's another issue, Carl. If we look at each lot individually, the number of units are out of balance with what is allowed. We have one lot, the southerly lot is underpopulated with units, it could take more, and the northern lot is overpopulated. And I think the board always assumed that you were going to merge the two lots. And I think in one of our recent conversations, you said that you wanted to keep the lots separate. And if that is the case, then the board is going to have to come to some sort of a decision, because would in effect be creating a non-conforming lot if you ever decided to sell off the ownership of the northernmost lot. It would have too many units on it. So could you respond to that?
Yes, sir. So in accordance with the site plans, we would merge all the tracks together. So the two lots would be merged by the site plan with the easements and condo package on it and recorded at the registry. So it would be as part of a requirement, initial approval of this board, that those two lots be merged prior to approving the site plan, and that would be happened at the registry, and we would absolutely do that. And you are correct, sir, the 4 units are now on municipal sewer, and we are investing in Maple Street so that Maple Street would have existing gravity sewer that's already in place, and we're extending that gravity sewer along Maple Street. That could be a benefit to residents on Maple Street if they show choice. And then all the way up to those units, almost the rest of Maple Street would be also on sewer on an E1 low pressure system that the units could also tie into that system. So that's a public benefit, and including some upgrades to Maple Street and cleaning up some drainage over there and everything. So that was all been consummated, and we took those 4 units and slid them back up the hill so that we didn't need the leach field anymore, and we consolidated the driveway to a narrow driveway, and all the things related there too that people had asked us to do to those 4 units. The density calculation is correct. We agree with the new state law summary that you guys mentioned. We did, as always, from the day one, did not propose any residential buildings on the commercial zone, but that's a moot point. I believe that the answers that you described, as well as the vice chair, we would agree with.
Carl, I'm wondering why you would want to wait to merge the lots and have that as a condition, because an owner of 2 adjacent lots can do a voluntary merger, which is really simple. You come before the planning board and state your case, and then a memorandum of understanding or something to that effect is written, and it's a done deal. And it would seem to me that getting that piece in place sooner rather than later would be to everybody's advantage.
John Cronin, respond for the applicant. We advise all of our clients not to merge any non-conforming lots that are pre-existing until the plan is final, that everything is satisfied, we're happy to deliver a merger document in escrow to be recorded with the plan. And this property here illustrates that sometimes a lot of time, effort, and money is put into a project and it doesn't get built. If that's the case, you want to retain your separate lots and your flexibility for some other plan. But at the end of the day, you know, this is on a good path. We expect that it will all be merged.
You make a good argument. I accept it, sir. Thank you.
Okay. David, we're going to go on to Tim and then Jason. Tim.
Carl, I assume you run the force main option by the town and DPW's okay with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all I need.
Yes, sir. So for the question from the board, so you were talking about the state RSA that stated multifamily has to be allowed in CB, basically.
It is, the state RSA is 67480.
Does that summarize the essence of it?
I will read it to you because it's brief. Notwithstanding any provision to the contrary, municipalities shall allow multifamily residential development on commercially zoned land, provided that adequate infrastructure, including roads, water, and sewage systems, shall be available or provided to support the development. That's paragraph 1. There are 4 paragraphs to it, but that is the gist of it. That is a recent legislative change at the state level that goes into effect actually next week.
Okay, so the part that we didn't talk about explicitly, the portion of the lot that's in CB versus the portion that's in R1. Is there legal guidance around that says, like, for example, I think we discussed earlier in another meeting, CB doesn't have a density requirement hooked into sewer. Am I remembering that conversation correctly?
Not exactly.
Okay.
Rob, only the CB allows you to have a duplex, single family home, and a duplex. If you want to have more than a duplex, you have to get a special exception.
But the law that he just cited.
For the sake of time tonight, they fully comply with the quarter-acre density, which is allowed in the R1. So there's really no non-compliance with their current plan as presented.
Let's close that loop right here. So I want to be specific to the 2 items that were flagged in item number 7 here, and make sure we are being responsive to those. We as a planning board do not make compliance determinations about the zoning ordinance. We think, based on our best information, that RSA 67480 related to commercially zoned areas covers that one issue, and that the intention to have the 4 townhouses on sewer covers the other. Technically, as Verdantis has suggested here, that should come to us in the form of a formal compliance determination from the land use administrator, essentially a memo from Rob as the land use administrator saying that those 2 things are actually legitimate zoning compliance determinations. We can only say what we understand that to be, but we as a board are not the compliance determination entity for the zoning ordinance that, as Verdantis says here, is either comes from the zoning administrator or the ZBA. So that's our understanding, but to close that loop entirely, there should be a memo from Rob to the board that states that essentially. Kurt, go ahead.
Yeah, that brings up one of my disagreements, I guess, with the board's understanding of the R1 density and how it's calculated. We've had this discussion months ago, maybe years ago now.
Don't bring this up.
Well, this is why it was brought up.
Can we stick to, it's 9:18.
I know.
And we're almost there. We're almost through this memo. We're so close, Kurt.
I would like to see in that memo from Rob that the quarter-acre density that is being calculated for this project is permitted in the R1.
Okay. Thoughts? Yeah.
Again,
I just want to see it in writing.
Essentially,
we're not the arbiter of zoning regulations.
we will stay tuned for a memo from Rob about the compliance of the proposal as it relates to those items and in general. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, really, it just has to say that the project is compliant
Right,
with all
right,
applicable
it's something
zoning.
an official document that says this is what we're going with.
Can we go on?
Last one.
Final comment of the evening. Number 8. I mentioned that 2 sections on the steep slope mat are non-compliant with zoning. I initially noticed this during the ZBA variance hearing and noted it in my appeal for the variance approval. With the new map submitted and the site plan application, I noticed these 2 sections still were non-compliant, parentheses, even worse than before, and 1 section doubled in size, even though nothing changed on the map. Section 1 has a total of 44,086 square feet. This is in the 15 to 20% average slope protection, which requires a minimum of 20% undisturbed vegetation. 20% would be 8817.2 square feet, and the planned undisturbed area is 4,353 square feet. Section 5 has a total of 39,271 square feet. This is in the 10 to 15% average slope protection, which requires 10% undisturbed vegetation. 10% would be 3,927.1 square feet. And the planned undisturbed area is 1,289 square feet. Section 13 shows a total of 14,196 square feet. When in plans submitted to the ZBA for the height variance, Section 13 showed a total of 7,204 square feet. Both maps depict Section 13 as the same, so I'm not sure why the numbers are different. Verdantis response: applicant must demonstrate meeting undisturbed vegetation standards or request variance to these standards. Recommended planning board action: require revised plans demonstrating compliance with slope requirements or variance therefrom. Carl, one last time this evening, if you could offer your commentary on this.
So this, the butter comment involves this slope summary plan here. So we started with this from day one, even with the preliminary work and the survey. And every time we made a submission, we updated the plan and the tables associated with those criteria. I have to commend the abutter because she found a typo in this table. I have to commend you for that. And although we were updating tables and spreadsheets and CAD work and integrating all of that in the slope categories, and it's a rather complex matrix, but we tried to simplify it. I think Tim did a great job with that. But there was one cell in this spreadsheet that was not updated when we did the final updates at the last round, and she caught that. And I commend her for that. Because when we went to the finals and went through everything and updated the tables, we found it also independently. We didn't even realize, because when we submitted this, she had already found it. So kudos to her on that. The overall numbers are still in compliance, I believe. And she gets into, why, and she'll probably want to speak to that, but you would probably defer to Verdantis as well.
Yes, I think we would.
Because there's different slope classifications, and the different classifications, we add those together and then divide those out. And there's min and max items on that are allowed, and we believe that we met all of that. Section 13 was a little small area up here, and we are impacting some of it, and then re-vegetating the slopes to naturalize and then put back into the conservation easement. Our intents were pure and well-founded. She found a typo, and if there's any other interpretive items that she has, we would welcome that discussion, and we can defer those to Verdantis. And we thank her for seeing that number, even though we believe that it doesn't affect anything.
So to the members of the board, I think we now have some corrected numbers here, but it seems like there is some substance here that is worth Verdantis reviewing in the next task order to be specific that we are addressing all of that comment as it should be. So can we include this in task order number 2? Everybody okay with that? With that, we have come to the end of the Verdantis memo. At this point, it is 9:23. I do want to open the floor for any general comments that the members of the public may have about anything we've discussed tonight or anything else that may be on your mind, with the proviso that at the next meeting, where we continue this hearing, we will start with Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission comments and move on to water supply capacity report and other items. But at this point, I think we are about at our bewitching hour for the evening, so I'm going to open up one last time comments from the public in the room or online. General open comments.
Could the board have an opportunity first?
We can. Go ahead, Tim.
Okay. So I submitted a memo to the board back on May 18th, and copies were distributed, hard copies. So as part of your board packet, I'm not sure the developer got that. You have it now, I think. And I just wanted to emphasize that is just my personal opinion. It is something when we get to that topic, when we're talking about the recreation amenities on the site. And so you know what my opinion is on that, and hopefully I've reasoned it out. So not to discuss it tonight, but just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. Any other comments from the board before we open it up to the public?
Just a quick question.
Kurt.
This was handed out tonight. I mean, I can read the cover sheet, but there's comments and sides, handwritten comments, and I have no clue who wrote those handwritten comments.
That's from Gerald. Dr. Tubbs.
Dr. Tubbs. Okay, okay.
Can I briefly summarize that? Or do you not want to get into it?
Let's cover this at the next meeting, if that's all right. Any other comments from the board?
Does the developer have a copy of that?
I would assume so.
We received it
Yeah,
tonight.
yeah.
We picked it up just like you guys
Yeah.
did.
I think he left a bunch of copies at the front table there for people to pick up on their way in. So yes, I think is the short answer to that question.
And then I have I have a procedural question. I have some questions for the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Council's memo. And how do I get that to them so that when they come back next month, they can be prepared to address those in advance?
I would address it with them next month and not in advance.
Okay.
They have the status of a butter under the way that the DRI statute works. So they have a certain status here. We should certainly, when this meeting is continued to whatever date it gets continued to, we should invite somebody from the Regional Planning Commission to participate with us, present their memo, and then we can ask them questions as a board from there.
They're treated as an abutter or an abutting town?
They are treated as an abutter as defined in the statute.
And legal standing.
Yeah, they RSA 3645, something like that. Yeah, there's a definition of abutter in state RSA, and they have a special status from us designating it as a regional impact. Their comments don't hold authority over their advisory comments. This board can take or leave any of their comments as they see fit, so they don't supersede our authority as a land use board, but they are, under the RSA, an abutter technically once something is designated as regional impact. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to get it clarified. So the Regional Planning Commission's report is just a memo regarding.
It's their comments on.
It's not a whole report about the impact on the community and all that.
They have written the board a memo with their comments on the proposal or the application in front of the board.
Yeah.
And is that available online for people to read? I assume
Yes,
it is.
it is. Let's see if I got it there. No, I don't think so.
You haven't
Wasn't
seen-
on the town website, links.
I thought it was.
I looked for it today, I didn't find it.
Well,
just.
Well, that's, okay. Well, that link's a little buried and you go to planning board.
Oh, there it is, UVLSRPC, I can see it at the bottom there.
Right there.
That's it. So you can read their comments, and we will certainly ask Rob to make sure that they are invited to the next meeting to present their DRI comments. in
Renee
person.
was actually, I don't know if she's still here. She was, she's here. We just didn't get to it.
We didn't get to, unfortunately, it's 9:30, so, yeah. Any other comments or questions from members of the public tonight? Yes, ma'am.
Linda, sir, sorry, I have a couple of things. So, I'm wondering what the actual square footage of the property is. Because what's listed, like in the notes for the agenda, I think it says 77.1, which matches the GIS records. But on the plans submitted, it shows 74.995 acres. And maybe it's skewed, but based on the slope maps, the acreage is 75.53. So I'm wondering, what acreage are we going by? So that's one. You don't have to answer it now, but that's one thing. There's 3 different acreages out there. And then on the new plans from tonight, on page 19, sorry, we didn't go over this tonight. Can I say this anyway, though? Just point it out.
It's open comment. You can comment on anything you see there.
19, what I think I see is the culvert is not over the wetlands. It looks like it's north of what is designated as the wetlands. And then, that was that. And then to go back to what Kurt had mentioned about the density, I know, I'm just, so if you look, I looked at the zoning, and if you look at the R3 and the R5 district, where it talks about the density, or, you know, the zoning, it has examples where it specifies that minimum lot size, for R3, minimum lot size shall be 3 acres except for dwellings, in which case minimum lot size shall be 3 acres per dwelling. And then it gives an example of 1 dwelling equals 3 acres, 2 dwellings equals 6. R5 district has similar language. The R1 district does not.